Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Myriacast, episode 9. This is a very special episode because we get to talk about the enormous universe that is Kingdom Hearts. And whatever feelings you have about it, it's quite influential in the sphere of gaming in general. So today, obviously, I'm joined by my co host, Spoon. Spoon.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good day.
And we have a special guest today as I adjust some of my production value. Uh, we are joined by Mist. Mist, hello. How are you?
Hello. I am doing very well today or
Great.
tonight, whatever it is for people. I don't know.
Yeah, day, night, whatever it is. We hope everybody is safe as well. And let me get the introduction out of the way really fast. There's a lot to talk about. We'll probably won't be able to get through all of it, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe there's a follow up to this. Who knows? So the introduction is this is Myriacast. Myriacast is a part of the Myriathon. So the Myriathon is a biannual charity that runs in summer and in winter. So this summer's is slated to be sometime in June. We were supposed to have it around June 11th to 14th. However, some things are shifting. So if you are curious about that and anything revolving that, follow this Twitch channel. You can also check out the Discord. It's in the description. And there's a Twitter as well. You can see it on the overlay here. But if you can't, for whatever reason, maybe you're just listening to the audio, the Twitter is at the Myriathon. And like I said, I want to keep this intro short. One of the things we are trying to do our best at pushing, Spoon and I in particular, trying this, is we really are interested in getting our YouTube going. So all the VODs from our Myriacasts and potential future video endeavors will be going on the YouTube for the Myriathon. Just go to YouTube and search in the search bar the space Myriathon. The reason why I can't do anything more beyond that, go to a custom domain, is you need to get 100 subscribers for that. So it's something we're really trying our hardest to push towards. I know nobody here probably wants to be sold this kind of thing. I don't like to be sold things. It's a but we're really, this is the one thing we really are trying to push for. And Spoon and I in particular love these podcasts, and doing these things allows us to bring people like Mist here to talk about these really interesting and amazing series like Kingdom Hearts. So yeah, please consider supporting our YouTube. Again, subscribing. You don't even have to turn the bell icon on. Just, you don't have to if you don't like being spammed. So, but we really do appreciate it. And if there's anything you want to add on to that, Spoon.
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna echo mostly what Otto says. I won't be too repetitive, but I know I'm seeing many more people than we usually have in chat here today, which we are very appreciative of, and appreciative of Mist for coming on, and those of you coming from Mist's Mist stream or Mist chat. We appreciate you coming. Thank you so much. If you would be so kind as to, if you enjoy the podcast today, follow the Myriathon, check us out, maybe check out the Myriathon itself when it happens. These podcasts do happen weekly on Mondays. You may not be interested in every topic, and that's understandable. And please check out the YouTube. We have our past VODs of the past 8 episodes that we have done. So if you're interested in any of those topics, we talked about Fire Emblem once, we talked about Gundam, we talked about Assassin's Creed last week. It's been a pretty varied topics going on, but mostly we stay in the realm of like RPGs, anime, JRPGs, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we may vary occasionally. But yeah, again, if you guys are enjoying it, please follow the Twitch, follow the YouTube, get involved. We'd appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks. That's it.
So now we're going to turn the mic over to Mist. Go ahead, intro, whatever else you want to add in there.
Hey, all right. So, as people probably know, I am mostly known for the Kingdom Hearts series being a speedrunner. That's not going to be the entirety of what the discussion is tonight, but I've very much been in tune with the series pretty much since the beginning of it, and that's just kind of how I've made a real name for myself over the years, is just being someone who's very active in the KH community, as someone who's like done all these like really lengthy types of runs, really optimizing runs and stuff like that. I'm very excited to get into the KH series tonight.
Great. Okay, let's get right into it now. So our agenda currently says a little bit of more expletive there, but it basically said, "What is KH? What is that?"
Oh God. Well, Kingdom Hearts is light, but besides that, an interesting little thing is how it was initially conceived was I believe it was like a Square employee and a Disney employee because they were actually relatively close when they had their studios in Japan and stuff like that. They met in an elevator. And they're like, "Hey, dude, they want to collaborate and stuff." And then they're just like, "Yeah, dude, that sounds cool." And then production of Kingdom Hearts pretty much started like at the turn of the millennium after they met in the elevator.
Yep,
And yeah.
that's what heard as well. They like Disney Japan and Square Enix worked in the same building at some point, so they just
Hmm.
met. And I I think it was Square Enix who approached with the idea. I don't remember the name of the guy or the individual. Maybe it was a woman, but I think it was a man, if I remember correctly. And yeah, we have Kingdom Hearts. I mean, it's an action RPG, as I'm sure most of you know. It's a crossover between Disney and Square Enix, Final Fantasy characters,
Hmm.
anime art style, Disney characters, Disney worlds, explore the worlds, uh, save hearts, and Kingdom Hearts is
Save
light.
Hearts. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It seems like the most insane combination like fanfic type stuff you've ever heard, and it kind of is. But
Yeah.
somehow it's like it's actually like really good. I don't know how they managed, but yeah, it's something.
It really is special in its own way. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing to conceptually consider. Okay, even just going through the thought process of, okay, well, we've got Square Enix and the Final Fantasy series, putting it together with Disney. Like, to me at least, it's an interesting combination. It doesn't intuitively come together when I just think about it the first time to say, okay, well, Disney, let's put Disney and Final Fantasy together. For me at least, it's not an intuitive combination that you'd think, okay, maybe this will work a certain way, but it really does, and we'll talk about it obviously further. But the combination works a lot better than I first considered, and I'm relatively new to the series. I started playing like 4 years ago, and it's a really cool combination. And I really like all the Disney stuff. I love.
Hmm. Especially in Kingdom Hearts 1, it feels like they really intermingled Disney meets Final Fantasy in like this very surprisingly cohesive way, where it's not just tacking on like original characters from the series and
Mm-hmm.
they're just kind of arbitrarily there, you know? They actually did a great job at, kind of getting the game's general story mixed in with the movies, and it actually kind of creates like a new sort of story for the movie on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, to be fair, I first played this series when I was like 5, because I was there from day one, man. 2002. My parents were like, I think our son would really like this game. It has Disney characters in it, and I did like it, but not really for that reason, as
Mm-hmm.
clearly now after I played after all these years. But yeah, 2002 is a very long time ago, and I can't believe the series is actually that old now.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. So, for me, actually getting into the series, when it came out, I was at that phase as a child. I was like 11 or 12. So I was at that phase where I was too cool. I was too old for Disney at that point, and I was too cool for that. Disney is for babies, and I wasn't into it. And then I think my younger brother played it at a friend's house or something, and he wanted the game for his birthday, so he got it for his birthday, and I eventually was coerced into playing it. And guess what? It was actually a really fun
Yeah,
game.
I know, right?
It's surprising.
Crazy.
It comes off as a kid's game when you first look at it. You're like, okay, Disney characters, come on, it seems a little kiddie. Which, by the way, you're never too old for Disney. Okay, so just if you think you're too old for Disney, get over yourself. I'm sorry.
No, I agree with that, but
Yeah.
but kids when they get in that middle
Oh yeah,
schoolish
of
age,
course.
they're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm too old for
Edgelords.
that. I'm too old for that baby stuff, man.
It
Get
all
out of
happens. You're
here."
just like, okay, get over yourself. Wait a couple of years, you'll figure it out. And it does like come across at first as a kids game, and obviously it's rated a certain way where I don't know what the rating is actually off the top of my head, but it's definitely not like rated mature. So
I think it's like E10 now
E10
for
now, yeah,
standard.
okay. So it's got the rating for it's supposed to be just about everybody, but I think like anybody of any age could really get into it and enjoy it. Much like a lot of there are plenty of Disney titles that are the same way. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can get into a lot of them, like Toy Story, for example. Kids and adults would both appreciate something like that, right? So.
Yep. I also want to mention real quick before we continue the conversation, just for those of you in chat today watching on Twitch or on Mixer, if there's anybody watching on Mixer, because we're streaming to that too.
Mm.
Feel free to ask questions. We may not always address your comments in chat, but we will do our best. But feel free to, don't feel like you're interrupting or anything like that. We are watching, we are looking at the chat, and we will do our best to address it if you have a question or a comment. So we want it to be, it's a conversation between us three, but we also want to talk to the people that are here.
We do a pretty good job of interacting with people, especially when they have very specific questions, whether it's to either Spoon or myself, or obviously Mist here. So please feel free to like ask questions or make a certain clarification comment, because we're wrong sometimes. We're not omniscient, so.
Especially with Kingdom Hearts. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't think there's a single person that knows every single aspect of this series. It's just that convoluted. Some are very dedicated and know a lot, but I don't know if one person knows everything.
Well, I can say I showed it to these two before this. They saw it. I spent about an hour watching some videos and such, because I haven't played every game, and I've done my homework today, and I'm still confused. I'll admit it, but I've done some homework. I've got a 2-page document ready to go. So, why don't we let's just jump in. We said we weren't going to go chronological. We're going to go game release.
Yeah. Let's talk about Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yes. Okay.
Mist, you're the most enthusiastic about Kingdom Hearts 1, so
of course.
Go for it, buddy.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just recall back. I mean, even now, it's like the first thing you see when you boot up KH1 is just that whole opening sequence. I mean, I know it's meant to be just like some kind of weird thing, like dive into the heart type of whatever, but even after like 20 years, it just seems like, especially for the first game, it's like, what am I playing kind of deal, you know?
Yeah.
And then you have like this whole dream sequence where you choose what. Like, I was like, where are the Disney characters? My parents said there were Disney characters in this game. I even see them on like the little cover art and stuff.
Right.
I'm just like, okay. And then, but then it's like you kind of go along with it, and then you're like, wow, this is actually kind of like really immersive and cool. And then you get like really scared along the way to some degree when you see like these monsters, and your shadow turns like this giant thing like towards the end of the tutorial and everything, and then all of a sudden you have the juxtaposition of just a nice bright sunny island to start the game up. It was honestly like one of the most memorable starts to a game I think I've ever had playing anything.
No one can argue that the series isn't artistic in a certain way. I don't think anybody can really come into a debate and say that this series in general does try and use visuals to its benefit, which is good. Obviously, it helps facilitate story and emotion and just like the interactions that characters are having with each other. So that is I can sort of agree with that. That it's at first you're like, okay, you've got this like disco sequence at the beginning, something like that, and then it just gets straight into the visuals of the island, obviously contrasted from the darkness.
Like, it has that level of mysteriousness that just makes you want to actually experience the game world, because I mean, and even now it's still mysterious. Like, I still don't really quite comprehend everything that's going on with it, but it's like it was almost like such a trip. I was like, every game I played up to that point, I mean, I was only 5, so I didn't play like too much, but it's like everything was like super straightforward and just like play the game immediately. Like, you get like a 30-second cutscene that like kind of introduces stuff maybe, but like the whole first like 10-15-ish minutes of KH1, and then you get on the island, it's like, what is this game?
Yeah.
I have to play more to really understand what is going on with this, because it's nothing like I was expecting it to be when I first hit New Game and stuff like that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, and let me quickly mention, before you even, you boot up the game and you get to the title screen, and you have one of, in my opinion at least, the most iconic and greatest title screen themes of all time that has been remixed again and again and again for the Kingdom Hearts games. Dearly Beloved is legendary. So good. And Yoko Shimomura is a godly composer. The series has such good music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I agree. And then Simple and Clean is a
Yep.
banger at the beginning.
Simple and Clean is a great one too.
Disco, Utada, and yeah, I agree with what these guys are saying. I think the first time I played it, I actually don't like the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1 that much. It's weird, but I found Destiny Islands a little bit boring. I
Oh
just
yeah.
didn't understand what was going on. I'm like, why am I collecting coconuts and fish and
It's like the
Oh, yeah.
typical
whatever
RPG fetch quest
Yeah,
type
it's
stuff. It's just
very
like, I don't
simple.
know.
Yeah.
whatever other nonsense they're telling me to collect?
But then,
But then, yeah, everything goes down, and you're like, oh,
hmm
okay. The Heartless show up, and you've got your little wooden sword, and you can't hurt them. And
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden, your weapon is a key. Wait, my weapon is a key. What is this?
and there's like
What is this?
yeah, there's also like this almost like purposely there's no voice attached to it, but you keep seeing these like little passages on the screen like Keyblade, open the door, like and stuff. Like it's meant to be like super ominous and everything,
Yeah.
and it just kind of like you're not really sure what to expect. It doesn't really seem that impactful at the start, but it's enough to like kind of get your attention and be like, oh man, this is kind of spooking me a little bit.
Yeah. What I'll say, at least from my perspective about Kingdom Hearts 1, I like the simplicity of Kingdom Hearts 1. By itself, I like the story the best in Kingdom Hearts
Mm-hmm.
1 of any of the games. I think it's the simplest. It makes the most sense. It integrates the Disney worlds the best out of any of the games. But KH1 for me is it's a really good foundation for a series. There were a lot of good ideas. The battle system's cool, the command menu, the just basic action combat with you got combos, you got a few modifiers, you got some abilities going on. But Cage One for me is just that. It's a good
Mm-hmm.
foundation, but I think it's a little clunky.
Absolutely.
Especially in the original when the
Oh
triggers
God,
controlled the camera
no.
and the right stick was the
Oh,
command menu.
oh
Yeah, that was
yeah.
Why did you?
rough.
Why did you,
Oh yeah.
I blocked
That
that out of my mind. I didn't
that
want you to
was
say it.
rough. Those of you who haven't played the original KH1 on PS2, yeah.
It's like I've heard people say I don't like the camera in KH1 on PS4. I'm like, boy, if you played PS2, you would love this game's camera by comparison. But yeah, it's certainly KH1, and I mean that's not a bad thing by any means. I feel like KH1 certainly did a lot of things right compared to like the things I did wrong, and especially since it was their first go at it. You know, it's like of course you're not going to nail something like amazing the first
Sure.
time when it's something kind of ambitious. Like I'm not familiar too much with Square as far as their take on action RPGs prior to this, but I mean I gather this was one of their first like real action RPGs they ever made,
Yeah,
and
I can't think of any,
yeah,
so
like
if
at least the first one that people like, you know, like the earliest one most people are familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the foundation, like you said, I think you said something about like Assassin's Creed 1 kind of being along the same lines with stuff. Like it was a great
oh yeah.
foundation for stuff.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about it last week.
hmm
Yeah.
It.
And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
No, no. I was gonna say it's. It. I was just gonna say that. Yeah, Assassin's Creed One felt the same way. It's good foundation. See if you can fix it later.
Exactly.
Lot of good ideas here, but the the
Execution isn't
yeah,
quite there.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The execution's a little bit off. It's not perfect, but like there's a
But mostly,
great base here.
yeah, but it's mostly because like it's their first go at it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you know you're not expecting to nail every single small detail. We'll talk about that when we get to two, but not yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, like the whole thing, like the island kind of goes foobar. You know, the darkness come in, the heartless attack. You fight the giant shadow monster known as Darkseid for the second time, and then suddenly Sora is taken away, as well as Kairi is taken away, and Riku is taken away. All the characters.
They all
in Destiny
split.
are just-
They all
yeah,
split. They're
they're pretty much
different.
all just gone, and what's it called? Riku kind of is like, take my hand and we'll leave this island together, and it's just like some weird metaphysical stuff happens and he's gone, and then he finds Kairi and then she disappears as she is launched towards him, and that's actually looked into a bit later in the game itself, and then suddenly Sora's just in this new world called Traverse Town. In the meantime, Mickey, who's one of the key bearers, you know, because at the time KH1 only had like 2 or 3 key bearers, it was much more simple.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, suddenly they're looking for this key to help whatever is going on with the darkness and the heartless
Right.
attacking, and essentially they go and coincidentally they go to Traverse Town, which is where Sora ends up being taken to after Destiny Islands
Yeah.
is kind of
Well,
eradicated.
he basically says, Donald and Goofy, go find the key, and that's where they just start going. And there's like that whole sequence in town where you're all like doing trying to find each other. Basically, they're trying to find you, you're trying to find them. It's that sequence. But
One thing Kingdom Hearts 1 does very poorly is tell you where to go.
Oh yes.
Man, it is so easy to get lost in that game. So many
Oh,
people
yeah.
wander around Traverse Town for so long. Like you get those like mini cutscenes with Donald and Goofy looking for you,
yeah,
and you gather that you're trying to meet up with them, but you don't know how to do it. And it turns out you just have to go back to the frickin' accessory shop.
I think that
well,
the most infamous of these would be Atlantica, when you have to ride the dolphin. It's like
Yep.
most people are just kind of like, how was I supposed to know that? And fun fact, Flounder actually tells you to try to ride the dolphin and see what happens, but it doesn't tell you that spawns the dolphin in another spot that you should ride to get to the next area you have to go to. So yes,
Yeah.
KH1 certainly could have done better with where you had to go. Although at the same time, you get to know the world and the atmosphere pretty well because of that. But I'm not trying to excuse, of course, the lack of
there were
direction for that.
there were plenty of games like that where it's I don't want to call it the sense of adventure. You're supposed to have a sense of adventure, but they're one of those. There's a different way to say it, but I'm not going to say it because it's a bit expletive. But where the heck do I go? Type of games. Those aren't bad at all. I mean, the Dark Souls series does that, but at the same time, I remember the sequence in Traverse Town trying to like roam around there and getting lost. I just got completely lost, and so there's an element where you're supposed to adventure and go around and explore, and that kind of opens up the idea of, okay, where am I supposed to go? But yeah, I do think it is nice when there's those clues, even the clues of like go ride the dolphin and see what happens. I think it's a good clue given in the right circumstances. But more of those it's nice when you get some clues at least. But there are definitely times where I'm just like, where am I supposed to go? What am I doing? What am I doing here?
Deep Jungle and Halloween Town are weird. I feel like people get lost in Deep Jungle a lot, and all you really have to do is go back and forth between the treehouse and the tent, the treehouse to 10, the treehouse to 10, so you get to the end of the world. But again, I remember wandering around that world, just being like, where do I go? I don't understand. I've been everywhere already.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't want it to like hold my hand and tell me just go here, go here, go here, and stuff, you know. But it's like it's not implemented as well as it could, and because of that, you just kind of end up just aimlessly wandering around a number of areas until eventually you just there's a cutscene here. Okay.
So
I mean, I don't know.
I was going to also say that I just want to say one more thing in particular that I liked about the game before going any further is I like the integration of Disney more in this one, probably more than the others.
Most people do too.
Yeah, it was the best one. I that was more relevant a little bit back when we were talking about, but I think that the Disney integration of this, especially as someone who just likes to see those Disney characters and movies and such get integrated, it was really nice to see the princesses all have like a certain aspect to the story that was relevant to what you're what you're supposed to do and what the villain's intentions were. So that was all really well put together. Actually, that was one of the strongest aspects of the game for me in particular.
The Disney villains in that one were a council of evil. They were.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, they were part of the. I mean, they didn't know Ansem's plot, but they had a plot going on. They were kind of part of it with Maleficent, whereas in pretty much all the other Kingdom Hearts games I can think of, the Disney worlds are just completely separated, and they're just kind of their own thing. They occasionally have something to do with the main plot, like maybe an organization member shows up, like in KH2, but that's about it.
Relevancy between like the story of the Disney World and the actual game itself was much better intermingled in KH1 than pretty much any other game.
Yeah.
Yep.
And see, I remember that one cutscene when you see all the Disney villains together after you beat Guard Armor. I was like, oh my god, what is going on? It's just this whole perspective of like what do you have to look forward to when you first play the game. It's like, am I actually gonna encounter like all these dudes? Because this is kind of awesome. Not gonna lie.
It's great. It is actually really cool to just be like, okay, the Disney villains are your villains. It's not to discount anything else, any of the other villains, obviously, but to Disney games are in this, you're actually going up against the Disney villains is kind of an interesting. It's an added touch. Like Maleficent, for example, like going up against Maleficent is a great like touch to that, where Maleficent is your one of your main baddies here.
I also love the pacing. They go back and forth between like what you're doing and what's actually happening like for that council, and you eventually find like Riku's working for them and stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like you get it's not so much that you just kind of like whatever, but it's like they know exactly when to kind of update you on what else is going on. That's kind of like the omniscient side from the player of
Yeah.
like what is the perspective. Like I feel like they did that very well to keep you intact with everything as far as going from like beginning to end of the game.
It's a cinematic touch that
Mm-hmm.
is really nice, particularly for games like that. It's really nice.
Yes.
So,
I want to go back real quick. Lady Suzuka asked a question in chat a while ago that we didn't address yet. It says, for those who have played KH1, favorite aspect of the battle system, especially as compared to other JRPGs or games of that time. And yeah, I think it flows really well. It's simple to understand. You just do combos, you have magic. It's just nice. It's nice action RPG combat. It's not overly complicated. It's not Devil May Cry or anything like that. The only other action RPG that I can think of at that time, at least that I played, was Tales of Symphonia, and that came out maybe a year or two after Kingdom Hearts, or it was around the same time. I
Well,
don't remember exactly.
how does it compare? Just how would how would you compare the two in regards to like, I don't want to say maybe necessarily quality, but
Um, I
haven't
really
played the
like.
Tales games, so you're on
Yeah,
this.
I really liked Tales of Symphonia. You should play the Tales games.
the Tales series
But
is good. It is good.
That's another. That's another topic. They're they're different. Tales uses a sort of battle scene, so you'll hit an enemy on the map and then you'll get transitioned to a battle scene, as opposed to Kingdom Hearts, where you just engage
Environment.
the
It's
enemies
the environment.
that are in just on in the world. I feel like the party's integrated a little bit better in Tales. Your party members feel more important. Your party members don't do that much, especially in KH1. Um, and your party's really important in the Tales games. You
Sure.
have like your healer who needs to heal you. You have your Genus who's the mage and he does a lot of damage and AoEs and stuff like that. And then one other character who is does stuff. So they're different. They're very different. They're both action RPGs, but they're very different. I think they both hold up in their own way. Kingdom Hearts, as I said, was a very good baseline for the series. Tales had been going for a little while, though Symphonia was the first one that was transitioned to the 3D. So I don't know. They're kind of hard to compare, but
Yeah.
despite them both being like action JRPGs, they're pretty different.
Yeah, they are.
In terms of how the combat works.
Well,
But I don't want to sidetrack into Tales too
Yeah.
much.
Sure.
I could talk for hours upon end about Tales as well. So yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I mean, just the whole like I especially like once you get towards the end of KH1, like the difficulty curve is like insane for that game. By the way, like
And the
if
end
you were like a little kid when you
is
first played
hard.
that, like I mean, like think of it. Clayton is like a very infamous fight. Guard Armor is a very infamous fight, but it's like and Agrabah and other fights to some degree, but it's like you get to Hollow Bastion, you have fights like Dragon Mal and
Yeah.
the second Riku fight and everything. It's like this game is not messing around anymore, man. It's like they really expect you to really know what you're doing by that point.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts how hard the game gets towards the end. It's like if you're a little kid, it's like good luck beating this game the last two worlds, because it's actually quite difficult compared to the rest of the game.
Yeah, we had a friend of ours I was talking to about this, and he was saying one of the reasons why he stopped playing KH1 was because of Dragon Mal. He just couldn't get past it. And like for me, I don't remember the difficulty that I don't even remember the difficulty I was playing on, but it was definitely something where if you're not experienced to a certain degree with a style of gameplay, or you haven't like gotten used to everything like with the controls, there's a certain level of challenge that you're gonna have to get over the hurdle. But that's part of the like, I mean that's part of the that can be part of the appeal as well, is to say, okay, well, with a high difficulty curve comes more like more ability
learning.
to, I guess, just digest and soak up everything you can, all of your abilities, all of your what you can do, and
It's
sort of
almost like
learn
it's
how to improve there.
testing your knowledge
Exactly.
up to that point in the game. It's like they feel like you've done enough at this point that you should be able to do it if you actually like are very focused and take into account what the enemy's doing and everything like that.
Exactly.
Which I mean is respectable because when you beat it, it's just that much more satisfying, But it's like
Sure.
as a little kid, you have like no patience. You're like this game sucks, and it's like you just like
Yeah.
do that for a lot of
And,
things.
and let's not forget, again, on the PS2 version, you could not skip cutscenes in that video
Oh
game.
yes, oh yes.
So every time you died to Riku 2,
Dragon Mel, whatever it may
Dragon
be.
You gotta watch
Mal,
it again.
any,
Oh
any,
my
yeah.
gosh.
There's a reason why you're not taking Kyrie's heart.
You're never taking Kyrie's heart became such an
yeah.
infamous line
because everyone died.
Yeah.
That sounds horrible. Like I don't think
Oh,
I
yeah.
played that version. I didn't play that version. That sounds terrible. I just that would actually trigger me. That would trigger me so much. It just like make it worse. Like, oh, I gotta sit through this again.
That's definitely one of the biggest complaints KH1 gets is like, especially when you do died and stuff like that, you cannot skip the cutscenes. Like even in future playthroughs, it's like, it's one of the that's actually one of the reasons why I didn't speedrun KH1 for the longest time is because you couldn't skip cutscenes. But they released the PS3 version and you can skip cutscenes in that now, so it's tolerable.
Yeah. So
yeah, and as to again the question in chat, they're asking why you couldn't skip cutscenes. It just wasn't a norm in that era.
Yeah, like Final Fantasy X and stuff like that.
You can't skip cutscenes in Final Fantasy X. That speed
Even
run's like
now.
10 hours
Even
because you
now.
can't skip
Oh.
cutscenes.
oh.
So, I mean, it is what it is, but I mean that's literally like the only game in the series you can't skip cutscenes. So they kind of learned it's like, okay, people didn't like this. Let's actually integrate cutscene skips like going forward, and that's a nice touch they did later. So.
All right, I think we should move on
Well,
to the next game.
actually-
we spent like 20 minutes. Okay,
well,
sorry.
before we move on, I do want to make one more thing, more of like a question to any of you guys as well as chat. What did you guys like actually think about the? I don't want to go through all the intricacies of the story and everything like that, but is there anything in particular besides what we've talked about that you think should be like highlighted now as like maybe something that wasn't important that became more important, which we'll talk about later, obviously,
yes.
too.
One thing I'd say. There's one very infamous line in this game that is like completely been like retconned. Is when you meet Riku in Hollow Bastion, he says there can't be two Keyblade Masters.
There you go.
Yeah.
And let's just say they just said no, we're not doing that. Like we didn't think this series would nearly get this popular, so we're actually just gonna expand like way more than that. But anyway.
There's a lot of Chosen One stuff going on in KH1 where Sora's the Chosen One. He's the only one that can use the Keyblade, on and on and on, and then it turns out 50,000 people can use the Keyblade. So yeah,
Anyway.
I mean, KH1 is written in a way where it has a satisfactory conclusion that the series could have ended there,
Mhm.
but then there's also threads
Funny.
that they knew they could extend it. I feel like it was written that way intentionally, where it was like, we don't know if this is gonna succeed and if it's gonna work, so it has to have a conclusion where if it doesn't work, then well, that's just it, but if it does, we can keep it, we can make a sequel and keep it going.
And they did well with that, and I mean, it succeeded. So
Yeah, for sure. Just yeah. Okay, now we can move to the next game.
yes.
Calm.
Yes, that
Chain
would
of
be
Memories.
Chain of Memories. Honestly, a lot of people hate on this game quite a bit, and honestly, it kind of makes me sad because I feel like it's in some ways more strategic than most of the games that are actually in the series to some degree. I mean, I'm not gonna fight people on that if they disagree, and that's fine. But it's like I've come to appreciate the combat of Com. That's kind of funny. Because it's a complete divergence where you're using like actual cards to build a deck for Sora, and you have to like play your cards in a specific way to like break other enemies' attacks and everything. It picks up right after KH1 where they go into like this whole new place called Castle Oblivion, which is kind of a segue into what is eventually going to be Kingdom Hearts 2. But it's just kind of to explain like how Sora is where he is in Kingdom Hearts 2, basically, along with our brief introduction to Organization 13.
Yeah, because Sora gets stranded in the end of the world at the end of KH1, basically, and Kyrie goes back to Destiny Islands, so yeah. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Chain of Memories is it was a GBA game initially. I'm sure most of you know.
Very good GBA game, by the way, by
Yeah,
comparison.
and again, I think it was kind of at the tail end, I feel like, of a trend in gaming at that time where I feel like every company did a card battle game, and Kingdom Hearts decided to do their take on a card battle game.
Fair.
And as I said, I feel like it was the end of the trend, so a lot of people decided they didn't like it because they were done with card battle games. But I agree, Chain of Memories is not bad at all. I think it's a pretty fun game. It can be frustrating at times, and the game is very repetitive
Yes, that's probably the biggest complaint that it has. Is it's
and
just
grindy. But it's the combat is fun. It's strategic. You have to build your deck appropriately to counter things. Some of the late game bosses, the later Riku fights, like Riku 3 and 4, the later
ugh,
Larxene fights, Marluxia, those fights are brutal. It's
they are.
so hard.
Let me tell you, the one when I played Com the first time, I beat Riku 4 after like a week. And I just went forward. I didn't save my game because I didn't know you could do that, and I died to Larxene too, and I like cried. I was like 8 or 9 at the time. I like
Yeah,
actually cried.
that's an
It
oof.
was it was not a fun. I mean, I eventually beat it, so I mean it's okay. But I've certainly grown to appreciate Com a lot more because I did not know how to play that game at all when I was like that young, and I still probably don't know how to play it the best to my ability, but. I was always that kid when I played. I was like I'd just be reloading my deck for one card for like 20 minutes to like keep hit just one more, like just slowly whittling down that health bar until I eventually won. And that was like my go-to strategy.
Yeah, I don't remember because it's been so long, but I feel like I didn't use slates at all the first time I played Com. I
I just
just
like mashed like
mashed
yeah,
the
just
attack
prayed.
button.
I mean I mashed a lot in KH1 as well. So
Yeah,
but yeah.
it. Yeah, I think Chain of Memories was actually a good game. It's not my favorite Kingdom Hearts game
Mm.
or anything like that, but it's probably up there for the spin-offs for me as
Oh yeah.
one of my favorite of the spin-offs. Um, I'm no expert on Com. I
Me
haven't played
neither.
the original Com since it came out. I've played Recom a couple of times on the remixes, so
That's
I know that.
Abandon's music. That's Abandon's
Yeah,
music. He's the
we
one that
know how
plays
much
though.
Abandon. No. Well, Abandon loves GBA Com and he despises
That's
Recom.
right. Yeah, he hates
Honestly,
Recom.
I don't blame him. Like a lot of people I've talked to say they're not really fond of Recom by comparison either because it's just you can literally like people associate KH3 with just spam fire. If you want the true spam fire speedrun, watch Sora's story in Recom. That I'm
Yeah,
not like aside from like 3 fights where they're immune to fire and
yeah.
literally
Axel because
then
he does fire.
and then you literally just use Blizzard.
Blizzard, yeah,
That's
Blizzard.
it. It's like if you know how to use fire, good. You know how to use Blizzard, good. You can do like 90% of the speedrun. It's kind of insane. Like the true spam fire to win game, absolutely.
The other thing that's broken in Recom actually is I think it's the Sonic Rave Slight.
Oh yeah, just stun
It
enemies for
stun
days.
locks them.
Mm-hmm.
They because it knocks the enemy up in the air and you just go back and forth and they can't break you because it just stun locks them. So that thing's broken too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Com original was like much more balanced in the gameplay aspect, which is why a lot of people have come to appreciate that more than Recom.
Yeah.
But
Other
yeah,
than that,
so
I don't have a lot more to say about Calm. The story's kind of weird. You're going through memories and you lose your memories
Hmm.
and there's this crazy girl named Namine who's
Kyrie's nobody.
deleting yeah Kyra's nobody but deleting your memories for the organization. The
Right.
organization is introduced in this game, by the way.
And it's amazing how Luke Surt is not in this game, by the way. It's
Yeah,
literally a card
yeah,
game.
he's the card guy and he's not.
What
The
a
card guy's not
wasted.
even in it.
I know it's like they. I mean, I'm just gonna guess maybe they didn't even really consider him as a character quite yet. I mean, they had to have very shortly afterwards. So I mean, I don't know what happened, but it's kind of it's such a huge wasted opportunity. He's not a part of the game that actually uses cards, but
He's just on his chair fuming. Like, why am
yeah,
I not
pretty
here?
much.
Yeah.
Why am I not here?
So yeah, like essentially, it's like you go through all these floors, relive the memories, quote unquote, that you forgot from KH1. Marluxia and Larxene are kind of like plotting against the organization to some degree to kind of like strip Sora of his memories and do what they want with him, and
Mm.
using Nominate because Nominate was created like in a different way than most nobodies are. She has this weird power to like mess with people's memories and just break them and stuff. And an interesting little tidbit is, from what I've read, actually, is that Marluxia, like, if you've noticed, he looks kind of feminine a tiny bit.
Well, I mean, he's got
Like,
pink hair, and
yeah, he's got like that androgynous look kind of going on. It's like he was originally going to be a female character, but then they're like, oh, if we make him female, then the two females of organization are trying to do stuff, and that's like that might not look very good in hindsight. So they actually changed it like the last minute.
okay.
Because
Interesting.
Larxene, aside from Xion, is like the only female member of Organization 13.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, you go through that. You do the stuff. Nominate restores your memories. You go for sleepy time. You see Sora getting caged too, and that's pretty much it. And also Riku's there somehow. I don't really know. Honestly,
He's just there.
Just
He's like, hey.
you kind of got out
Hi.
of the realm of darkness.
He's like, hey, I'm here.
Hmm
He's
And
going through his own thing, dealing with Ansem possessing him and his deal with that.
Yeah.
So
He's got other. Yeah, he's got other things to deal with. For sure.
honestly, like, I mean, a couple notable things happen in Con, but it's not like the most super important part of the series. It's just kind of, like I said, a way to kind of get Sora into KH2.
Right. It's a segue. It really
Yeah,
is
pretty
just a segue. So
So yeah,
okay.
Com is good.
KH2.
Yes. I'm sure Spoon is going to be happy about this
KH2 Spoon.
yeah, I mean, it's Kingdom Hearts 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. I adore Kingdom Hearts 2. It, in my opinion, has the best action RPG combat of any game ever that I've played.
It's definitely one of the best anyway.
Um, and that's most the story's good too. I don't quite like it as much in a vacuum as KH1, but I think only due to just the issue with the Disney worlds kind of being pretty separate. Again, there's
Yeah.
a few organization members that show up in the Disney worlds, but other than that, they're really kind of their own thing.
Yeah, they're their own internal story.
And if I'm to be honest, second visits feel a little, I don't want to say tacked on, but that's what I'm going to use. Because it feels like they made the game and then they're like, man, this isn't long enough. I guess we'll just have them go back and revisit the same worlds over again. And then, yeah. So, but the combat is what I love about it the most. It's immaculate. It controls great. Gravity exists. Cough cough Osaka team. And the way you can modify your combos with abilities, the way you have so many options. You have drive forms, you have limits, you have summons, you have magic, and all of it can combo together and blend together in any way you can possibly imagine. And you just have so many options, and they all blend together so nicely into such a great, I mean, just an amazing and fun, diverse combat system.
While we're on that topic, like we didn't really mention this, but I guess it's appropriate now. Is like a really interesting thing that 2 did compared to 1 is you can actually chain magic into your actual combos now.
Yep.
Because magic was basically like it's just kind of like one-off usage in KH1. Your combos were strictly only physical in that game.
Yep.
And just the potential, especially with certain strategies like reflect, slapshot, reflect into like finishers and stuff. Like when you get combo master and everything, makes for some of the most like fun boss fights, especially when you get to like the data org and everything like that. So certainly 2 improved quite a bit on the gameplay perspective of combat because it's much more versatile. You have much more like just much better integration of more useful things, like even stuff that you wouldn't even think would be that good. Like I can imagine. We didn't even really touch upon summons in KH1 just because most of them really weren't the best. And overall, KH2 summons are actually quite great, like by comparison. There's less of them, but they're like better quality across the board.
In KH1, all I used was Tinkerbell to like not die to Dragon Mail and stuff like
Yeah,
that. She
it
just
like,
keeps you alive.
Use
Yeah.
Cure just to heal with my MP and all that. It's like I mean, I just remember all these memories of me playing the first time and just not knowing the full extent of how destructive magic is in this series. Like I mean, certainly there's been like highs and lows for how insanely powerful Magic has been, but Magic in general in the Kingdom Hearts series has always been like absurdly powerful when used
Yeah.
properly.
Actually, I feel like Kingdom Hearts gets a bad rap from people who play the series kind of casually as a very easy button mashy RPG, or it's like, yeah, you just mash X to win, or
Yep.
with KH2, it's like, oh, you could just press triangle to win with
Yeah,
reaction
exactly.
commands or whatever, and it's like, I mean, for the most part, so KH2 English, the base game before FM, is super easy. Damage is toned so down in that both you do less damage and the enemies do less damage to you. So it it's standard, especially beginner, but standard mode, I think in base KH2 is really, really easy. And I think that's part of where the series gets the bad reputation for being a little bit button mashy is because the game, you don't really have to do anything else
Yeah.
on
Mm.
the normal difficulty other than just like press X to kill the enemies.
I'm glad you mentioned this because that's something I actually wanted to talk about when we get to a certain thing with KH3 with
Okay.
DLC type stuff because
Yeah. Yeah.
even on beginner mode, the DLC is kind of insane.
Yeah,
But
it'll
we'll,
mess
we'll
you
get
up.
we'll get to that later. But
I do want to
Yeah.
point out, as somebody who, like I said, played these recently, and I would say I'm more on the casual side for sure. But like you can fall into the trap of button mashing. You really can, and I did, absolutely did. And you just like
I think-
if you're not willing to experiment and test those things out, you could definitely get trapped in it. And like depending on your difficulty, you can just sort of stick with it, and it doesn't matter. But eventually, like there are certain fights where you can't really accomplish that, so you can get away with it for a good portion of the game for just like when you're running through the environments and such, but like the sort of like the especially when you increase difficulty, you can't really do that forever though. So that's yeah, but I can see how like people can fall into that trap for sure.
As I said, in base KH2, I think you kind of could. In FM, damage is toned up. So
yes,
if
even
you
on beginner mode.
button mash even on beginner mode, but on standard mode, which is
On
what I
standard, yeah.
assume most people play when they play the game the first time, you get messed up if
Oh,
you
yes.
just mash away at like Zigbar or like Roxas. Man, when people get to Roxas the first time, oh boy!
You can't.
Did you learn? Did
No.
you learn how to play this game? No.
I
Oh yeah,
hope
you're
so.
dead.
Oh my.
Yeah, so that's when you
That's-
can't fall into that trap.
Roxas, like I almost equate Roxas to like the Dragon Mouse / Riku 2 of that game, as far as like it's testing you, like have you actually learned how to play the game or not? I definitely think Roxas is a much more difficult fight than those two by comparison, but I mean it's still like the same kind of. You're this late into the game, you should know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like it's mono y mono, no party members, no tricks, just you and Roxas in Sora's head, just
One of
duking
the
it
best,
out, yo.
Quite frankly, one of the best fights in the series, might I add.
I agree.
It's pretty badass.
And it should be one you
Uh,
shouldn't button mash. Like it's
like,
a
it
fight you
doesn't do the
shouldn't.
fight justice.
Yeah,
Doesn't do it justice.
you shouldn't be button mashing through that one in particular. Like, it just in a one-on-one fight, if you're able to win it by button mashing,
Lame.
it's a detriment to the game. Yeah, it doesn't feel right. So good on them for not allowing button mashing to work in, particularly in certain situations where it just like one-on-one fight just shouldn't work.
Yeah, like especially with just the beauty of KH2's combat. I know Spoon kind of already went into that to a degree, but it's like you don't like, even just hearing this, you might think yeah, it's good, but then you actually see like some fully developed like speedrun strats for certain fights, and you're just like, what just happened? Like the potential for this game is almost like infinite with strategy, with what people have actually come up with, certain combinations of like magic and physical attacks, and waiting until they do very specific attacks to these very specific moves with limits and drives and reflect
Yeah.
and guard. It's like it's you could have like 10 strategies for certain fights if you actually really dug into it, which is really amazing.
And back to kind of the button mash. I think most people when they play KH2 the first time, they kind of just mash X and then they cure when they need to. A lot of people, when I watch casuals of KH2 for people who've never played KH2 before, they just mash X. They don't use any magic except cure, and the game even de-incentivizes you from using cure because cure takes all of your MP.
Yeah, it does.
But if you have 1 MP left, you can still cast Cure, and it
Yep.
puts you in MP charge. So you can use, 6 fires or whatever, and then Cure.
I distinctly remember, because I know you definitely watched me. I almost guarantee you, I triggered you, and that happens a lot. I trigger him a lot, all the time when I play these games. He'll just kind of. I'm sure he's just shaking his head like, "Oh, Otto, you're so casual. My gosh." I know he told me that trick, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
I think one of the coolest things about KH2 with the combat, going back to the diversity, is the diversity in the magic spells. Fire is a radial AoE around
Mhm.
Sora. Blizzard is a straight line projectile that pierces enemies.
Mhm.
Thunder has not infinite range, but has a lot of range and just strikes down on enemies and has big AoE when you upgrade it to Thundar or Thundaga. Magnet is your crowd control spell. It costs a lot of MP, but it's your crowd control spell and is awesome. And
Yeah.
then Reflect is the get good spell. It's like learn to reflect stuff,
Oh boy,
idiot, and do a
reflect
ton of
is.
damage.
Wow, you call people idiots? That's
No,
messed up.
I'm kidding.
But yeah, we didn't even really talk about the matching in KH1. There's a completely different MP system between
Yeah.
the games. It's like a lot of people like rank on KH1 because like the MP system is like completely busted. And to a degree, I will say it. Yes, it definitely kind of is. Like the biggest thing is 1 MP cure. Everyone's like that is way too lenient. But then I think to myself, it's like, can you imagine playing Proud Mode in KH1 and you lose all your MP if you had to use 1 cure in that game? With how like because KH1 with KH2 I feel like it's designed around the fact that you can pretty much do it with like 99% of encounters if you're very diligent. Like once in a while there's like a situation you're just probably going to get hit because that's just what happens. But KH1 was certainly not designed in mind with you being able to like avoid damage at every given moment. So I mean, I'm kind of it's one of those things they kind of finessed when KH2 came out, you know? It's like you're gonna get hit in KH1, so I mean 1 MP cure. On Proud Mode, you're gonna be thankful for that for most people because Proud Mode in KH1 is very kind of BS at times. Like
it's brutal.
Like it's very unforgiving for the type of game that it is.
Ansem 3 sucks. If you don't have Leaf Bracer, just good luck on Ansem 3.
Leaf Bracer makes KH1 pretty easy, to be honest. Like like Leaf Bracer, MP Rage, 1 MP cure. If you're paying attention, you basically can't die in that instance. And and if you have second chance, like you're basically like indestructible. But
yeah,
certainly like the MP system in KH1, I feel like the MP systems work well for the games that they're in. I should say. I honestly don't think I would really prefer the MP system to be swapped by any means between the two. I think they're appropriate for what they are. So I mean, is MP broken in KH1? Yeah, kind of. Would I want it any different? Not really.
If Cure took all of your MP in KH1, that game would be, I won't say impossible, but it would be really freaking hard.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like, as much it definitely feels like it's way too busted when you don't play Proud Mode, but I feel like as soon as you really get in on Proud Mode, you're like, oh my god. That's the time you're really thankful that it's 1 MP because avoiding damage in that game at times is like basically impossible. So
yeah, and the MP system in kind of both, but I was gonna say KH2 specifically is really unique. I've never seen any other game handle magic the way MP does, where when you run out of magic, you don't have to throw an item or anything. You can just wait for a little bit for it to come back, and then there are benefits to being an MP charge in KH2, like your drive recovers faster when you're in MP charge, which is really cool. Again, I've kind of harped on this a couple of times already, but the diversity to KH2's battle system is just what gets me about it. There's a near infinite number of combinations and strategies and ways to approach fights in that game.
I don't want to stick on MP for too long, but it's like one other thing I wanted to say is I like that it rewards you in KH1 for giving you an actual like MP charge up when you actually deal damage to enemies, you know, and that like that's so they're actually kind of encouraging you to like not be super passive,
to be aggressive,
and like be smart about when you do it. But
they're like get in there and hit them, you'll get your magic back.
It does reward you to some degree for finding an opening and punishing, you know. So I mean, I like that aspect about it. And also ethers in KH1, I feel like they're good, but ethers in KH2 are like insane by comparison, just based on how they're both great, but it's just because of how the MP system is between the games. Ethers and KH2 are like insanely good.
Yeah.
Because like 3 MP recharge in KH1, I mean that's an Ars Arcanum, that's good. But and you can be like 1 MP in KH2, use an ether and you're back to full. Like that's crazy for that.
Yeah. That's a lot of magnet finishing leaps and a lot of
Oh yeah,
magnet thunders going
absolutely
on,
crazy.
or a lot more reflex.
But yeah, not to harp on that for like super long. Just
Mhm.
that's what that came up after a bit.
Yeah.
So I have another question here. Actually, it's not related to that stuff. So we talked about KH1 Com and KH2. If KH2 the series and the story that itself stopped here, what would you think?
I like the ending to the story in KH2 very much.
Okay.
Honest, I thought when I played KH2 the first time that was gonna be it.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like, and then you got that one cutscene at the very end where it's like, oh, okay,
The bottle.
The model.
we're
Yep.
not we're not done yet. But it's like they literally could have just like had the credits play after that, like you're home, they like grab hands and then like just play the credits and nothing else. And I honestly I feel like that would have been satisfactory for the series. It would have been kind of weird to have Calm as that sort of middle game for what it was, but I mean it would have been fine. It was like I feel like 1, Com, and 2 is actually a very good trilogy as what that was at the time
Yeah.
frame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
It at least feels like a
It's
completed a completed storyline for sure.
That
It did,
was
besides
the
the little
journey.
the bottle, obviously.
Sora's journey from the start of KH1 after Destiny Islands gets devoured by darkness is to find his friends and get back to Destiny Islands.
Yeah, it's
And
like sort
that's
of
what they
poetic.
do. That's what they do at the end of KH2.
It's like this quote unquote journey was like that trilogy of games basically,
Mhm.
and it's like poetic in the sense it kind of ends the same way it sort of starts in a way.
And it's
And-
funny because all at the start of KH1 when you're on Destiny Islands, all they can think about, man, I want to get off this island. This island's terrible. This sucks.
Yeah.
And then they
Yeah.
lose it and they're like, man, I want to go back.
Yeah, you wanna go back.
But I mean, it's like
Bring me
it's
back.
kind of the beauty of it though, because
Yeah.
it's not just like arbitrarily thrown in there that they just want to go back. There's like reasonings behind that
Mhm.
too. Like and it's like they're also like teenagers still trying to figure out life and stuff. So it's like
Yeah.
very and like I mean obviously the series is far from realistic, but I mean relatable certainly to that degree for a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Sure.
And then we come to Days. After,
Okay.
Actually, we didn't even talk about the organization.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about organization.
We haven't
It's
talked
like-
about the story at all.
Well, I mean,
too,
it's
yet.
that's imperative of Days anyway. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's fine. But
We
certainly-
should talk about Days, and Org will be talked about in Days
yeah,
for sure.
That's fine. So, after that particular scene in KH1 where Sora stabs himself in the chest, because like that's a big thing with KH1 as well is when
What's a big moment? Yeah.
Yeah, when Destiny Islands kind of went to heck, yes. Kyrie's heart actually went to Sora because she pretty much fell to the darkness of it, and he was the closest source of like light, I guess. I don't know. Then so she kind of became like living rent free in Sora's heart or some meme. I don't know.
Something like that.
And basically, it's discovered that Kyrie's heart is one of the seven. Kyrie's one of the 7 princesses of heart, and her heart's inside Sora. So, Ansem, who we're gonna go into more detail about very soon, anyway, is basically the big honcho behind everything, aside from the Disney villains in KH1.
Mhm.
And he possesses Riku for a bit. They have a fight. Sora prevails, and Riku's kind of like whatever, but they have that all figured out. And essentially, he frees Kyrie's heart by sacrificing himself, and Kyrie's able to come back and somehow bring Sora back because of plot. I'm not quite sure.
Mhm,
There's
sure.
actually a time Kyrie was actually useful and saved Sora, and that was actually pretty nice. But yeah, and in the meantime, when that happened, they start to introduce the whole term of nobodies instead of just heartless, like a second variant of enemy types in the series itself. And when a person of strong will loses their heart, a greater nobody forms. They retain like their physical appearance and everything. And here we have Roxas, and I think that's a good sort of segue into what Days ends up being, since
Mhm.
technically Days takes place before KH2, but it's much more impactful if you play 2 first. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then that's kind of the whole introduction to Org 13. Days is basically the whole Organization 13 like side of everything
Mhm.
from Roxas's perspective.
Yeah,
And the-
Days is the main character is Roxas, who is in release order. KH2 comes out before Days, so you were introduced to Roxas, which we didn't talk about the Roxas segment of KH2. It's the first like casually maybe 3 hours of the game or so.
Yeah, something like that.
To get you play as Roxas, and most people hate Roxas World in KH2 because man, KH2 finally came out. Where who's this guy?
Yeah.
Where's
Who are you?
Sora? What's going on? Why is this guy control like garbage? Why am I on summer vacation collecting money to go to the beach and fighting in a struggle battle tournament? What is this nonsense? What is going on with this part of the game? And then the end of Roxas World happens and you're like, "Oh, that's pretty sad."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, to some, but even then, it's also kind of like because I feel like story-wise, the way they did Roxas was like very good in Cage 2, but it's just like without the context beforehand, it just seems so random, you know. But then, of
Yeah.
course, like you learn more about Roxas in the events of 2, and even more so on the back of Days, and like that makes the whole sort of period of Roxas's existence just like hit a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Days, I've only played it once, and it was when it came out, basically back in 2010. I want to say, is that right?
It came out
2009,
during
I'm pretty sure.
college.
Nine. I was
Yeah,
close.
it was college.
Okay,
2010 was BBS.
that's right. Okay, 2009, and I said it in chat already, but the story's really good. The characters are good. It's interesting. It's a little confusing at parts, but the game itself is just
Mm-hmm.
it's a slog, man. It feels like, and I actually saw an opinion piece on this game once that basically said that maybe the game was intentionally designed this way to be boring and repetitive to make you feel like you're actually these characters, like because they're complaining throughout the entire game like, man,
Yeah,
I don't want to do
exactly.
these missions, like this work, man, this is terrible. I just want to sit here and eat ice cream with my friends and just hang out with my best buds, man. We got to do these. It feels like the game feels like work.
Yep.
And I'm serious. Like the gameplay for the most part is just a complete slog. Most of the missions, there's some awful bosses like Ruler of the Skies. Gosh darn it!
And
What a
its best friend comes back in KH3.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, and if in fact the game was intentionally designed to be work like and be a slog, so you can better relate with Roxas, Shion, and Axel, then it's absolutely brilliant. If not, then the game is just boring.
Yeah, I mean,
So
like honestly, I felt that way too. And then when I actually like someone addressed, that, I was like, you know, that kind of makes sense with like how it is. But like, I don't feel like just because it has like a purpose makes it better gameplay wise. You know what I mean? Like it makes
yeah,
sense for it to be that way, and like I can kind of relate to some degree if that's like what they were going for. But it's like it's just one of those things that just it doesn't really feel great to experience firsthand. You know?
no,
Like I guess I can kind of see the appeal of like why they just made it a movie in like the HD collections, because that I feel like, you know, there's certainly some things you still don't quite get out of Days if you just watch the movie. But I mean, I still haven't even finished Days because I just found it too repetitive. Like I would get like halfway through, I'm just like eh. Like I'm kind of fed up with it, you know. And maybe someday I'll actually go back and finish Days, because I mean it's only like one of 2 KH games I haven't beat at this point, and I really need to get around to the other one too. But I mean, for what it is, I think Days does a good job, at least, you know, giving more insight to the organization and Roxas and our cool girl Shion, who has a very unfortunate existence.
Mm-hmm.
yep, yeah.
Maybe not so
Days,
much anymore, but
as Miss said, Days serves its purpose. It's a nice. It gives a lot more backstory on Roxas when people just didn't understand him in Cage 2, basically, when they played Cage 2. And it served its purpose. It's not an especially fun game. There's the the panel system with the abilities and magic and level ups was like interesting, but overall I don't think I like it that much. I didn't like how you had to slot in level ups. I'm like, why can't I just level up normally? I don't like why. I don't I
I mean,
don't
I
know.
do like innovative stuff like that in games, though. But yeah, it's
It
like
doesn't always work. It doesn't always
exactly.
work.
It's
um
risky.
and actually that game had a multiplayer mode, by the way, where you could play as the other organization.
And you could like get like special weapons like giant bananas and umbrellas and stuff. It was pretty good.
Yeah. So I yeah, the game serves its purpose. It's not terrible, but it's not great just because the game is kind of boring. Also, Agrabah, so much Agrabah. Like, I don't
Pete.
know. Yeah, and Pete.
God, Pete was an experience.
So yeah, I don't have
But
much
yeah,
else to say about
I
Days. I
don't,
don't know
like
about
it's
you, but
another. There's even though it's called Organization 13, they actually had a 14 member called Jian, who is meant to be like this #1 copy, I believe. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's why that's the thing with the X in there, and it's meant to be like a sort of artificial like Keyblade user because they've been obsessed with the Keyblade's power because like the whole Keyblade War will take place because darkness and blah, blah, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like
Mhm.
there's still a little bit more to touch up on, like especially with Union Cross and stuff.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's
We can't wait till for that because that's when it gets really messy. But
now
yeah,
we.
pretty much they really are after collecting hearts, and that's how you defeat the Heartless. They get hearts. They can do Kingdom Hearts things, make the other Kingdom Hearts do this thing with the other
Yep.
Kingdom Hearts, and yeah, like I still don't fully comprehend the story. I mean, that's probably not that complicated compared to other things, but
I just think it was they're just collecting more hearts,
the
and they
big
get
problem
enough.
that came yeah the big problem that came about was while Sora was sleeping and regaining his memories, Jian was meant to be kind of like this embodiment. Like I almost basically attribute Jian to being a female Sora, pretty much.
she pretty much is female
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
Sora.
and because of her existence, like the memories are conflicting, like between Roxas and Jian. Like they can't, Naminé cannot put Sora back together because of
Right.
Jian's existence, basically. And basically Xian learns this at some point during the story, and if it has to happen, she's just gonna go out swinging, and that's why like Roxas leaves the organization eventually. He's like fed up with like how everything is going on. He feels like he's lost his like little friend circle with like Axel and Xian and everything, and eventually they have this huge spar off between Roxas and Xian, which I mean from a story standpoint is probably one of the most depressive parts of KH, like that it has to happen, but I mean it works out in the end anyway after 3. um and essentially Roxas defeats Xion, she kind of fades, and Sora's basically able to come back
Mm-hmm.
to his normal self afterwards. And because Roxas is very bitter about obviously losing Xion, he seeks out Riku to kind of get more answers and just take vengeance. And eventually, Riku overpowers Roxas by tapping into the darkness that's left behind from Ansem. And that's why you see him as Ansem from KH1 in KH2, because that part of him still like resonates within Riku after the whole succumbing to darkness in KH1. And he's basically able to incapacitate Roxas and basically give him amnesia, pretty much, and like digitize him into like this fake
Right.
Twilight Town, which is what explains why he's there at the start of KH2 and he doesn't remember anything really, or it's just like this is like typical kid that just wakes up one day and starts
Well,
doing everyday things.
him and Diz do it. Him and Diz
Mhm.
digitize him.
Also
Yep.
known as Amson the Wise. But
Yes.
that's spoiler. Sorry.
Oof.
uh, anyway, but yeah, that's pretty much Days in a nutshell. That it gives a whole build up to why Roxas exists and everything. And then I believe BBS comes
That's
next, and
BBS.
and this is when stuff gets a little weird. Not like super weird. That's 3D.
I just want to
But
say, I don't know how people feel about this. I kind of like this game, but for different reasons. Obviously, like it is like it does. Yeah, it's got a lot of stuff, but I gotta be honest. There are a couple parts where I just laughed really hard. I thought there are certain parts that were just so silly and funny. I couldn't get over it. Terra is just a very silly, gullible. Like if I went up to Terra
Math.
and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
gullible's not in the dictionary," he'd probably go check. It's just like also the near when you fight Ericus, when he screams, I almost like wet myself laughing. It's just like there are certain parts I just couldn't help myself. It was so funny.
We have a clip from Otto's stream from whenever he played BBS a few years
Yeah, it was a
ago, and
while
it's
ago.
just Eric is doing his charge, going like, yeah, yeah!
He's just
And
screaming.
we are dying. It is. I mean, you kind of had to be there, but oh
It's
man,
kind of like
it was
because it's Mark Hamill, right? So like just picturing
it's
Mark
Mark
Hamill.
Hamill.
Okay, just scream, constantly scream, just do it. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh,
the
but
darkness die.
yeah, this game went. I don't.
I-
It's just like there are a
So-
lot of stuff. There's a lot of baggage here.
So yeah, in BBS you control 3 different characters. There's Terra, there's Ventus, and there's Aqua. And this game is a prequel. It takes place about 10 years before Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's their master, their
There's
training.
Ericus.
Yeah, they're training in this place called the Land of Departure, which is a new world to the series at this point. They have their master, who is Ericus, and this obviously evil guy
Oh
who's
my
also
gosh.
a Keyblade master named Xehanort. They were just like, "Oh man, Master Xehanort, he's cool, right?"
like-
And then he's just sitting there like,
It's just like the most obviously evil person
with the
ever.
wiggly fingers going on. You're
Uh-huh.
like, "All right, this guy's so obviously evil. It's not even funny."
Mhm.
Just
But I mean, it is what it is. Honestly, I actually enjoy BBS to a decent degree. Certainly not as much as 1 and 2, but
Mhm.
I mean,
I do too. BBS and Calm are probably my 2 favorite of the spin-off
like
games.
like
quote
Com, I feel
unquote.
like BBS gets like kind of like dunked on by people for like a lot of reasons. But I feel like as a KH game, it's kind of like But as a general game, I thought it was fine.
oh, as a general
It was-
game, it's really it's
Yeah,
entertaining. I like it a
It's
lot.
not bad. It's not bad. I like the diversity and like actually playing as 3 different characters to some degree. There's some things I don't like. It does get repetitive after a while, especially when you're kind of like completing the reports for everything.
Yeah.
But we're not going to count that because that's not
Yeah,
fair.
the grind.
Yeah, like that's like 80% of completing BBS like to completion is like grindy stuff, but especially Ventus has become a very hot topic for KH with Union Cross, but we'll get to that in a little while. But pretty much it's like 3 Keyblade wielders because there can only be 2 Keyblade.
There can only be
masters
2.
that aged very well. Um, and pretty much it's like I think they have the Mark of Mastery where they upgrade from being like an apprentice to basically a Keyblade master by
Right.
definition.
Padawan
And,
to full Jedi Knight.
exactly.
You know?
And Aqua passes and Terra fails, and then Terra gets salty, so he runs away. Or I mean, I don't think that's actually what happens. But then,
No,
like,
I think it's a little bit
he
more
takes,
than that, obviously.
Xehanort takes this opportunity, I think.
Yes.
Like
Yeah,
because
he gets baited.
Terra failed to kind of coerce him into like doing other stuff. And basically, Terra leaves on a whim, and then Ven's like, "No, Terra, come back." And then Aqua's like, "Oh God, I have to be mom," and I have to go mom mode and actually go after
Yeah.
them. So, because Terra is reckless and kind of an idiot, quite frankly, you kind of just
Very gullible.
yeah.
as
There's a
Aqua
lot of gullible
puts it.
people here.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
snowballs into the thing that happens with BBS, and essentially they go through all the Disney worlds once again. It's kind of like there's always been this trio of like 2 guys and a girl. It's like Sora, Riku, Kairi,
Mm-hmm.
Roxas, Axel, Xion, like that kind of thing going on. Same thing here with like Terra, Ven, and Aqua, and they're experiencing hardship and blah blah blah. Terra's just being Terra and listening to Master Xehanort, not even thinking about stuff. He's like, "Oh my God, he's evil after like 80% of the game. No way. How did I not see
Yeah.
this?" It's
Oh my gosh.
like there is like from an audience perspective, it's so frustrating to see how Terra is just so, like you said, gullible. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know really what else to say, but
He's like
it
being
also-
told to kill princesses. Like, yeah, okay, sounds good.
oh yeah,
And
oh, sorry.
in the first world you go to Terra, I think it's Enchanted Dominion, the Cinderella world.
Yeah, I think it is.
You go into the castle and Maleficent's like, "Yeah, just use that Keyblade and take her heart for me." He's like, "All right, cool."
Sounds good. It's like,
Wait, what? No, don't do that. Why?
It's also very funny how he meets up with D-links of like all the evil characters specifically,
Yeah.
instead of like Ven and Aqua actually like they Dimension Link, by the way, that's what that stands for. I don't know like what you thought, but and essentially they're like the sort of summons, quote unquote, where you get like their movesets and everything,
Mhm.
and that's like another thing entirely. But pretty much Terra's an idiot, gets everyone in trouble, and everyone else kind of suffers because of that.
Yeah.
That's basically BBS's story, and then because Ven and Aqua are trying their best to like not have bad things happen, they just kind of get enraptured and everything. Ven in particular, I forget the exact specificity of this, but it's like because of Ven's existence and like Vanitas coming about because
Yes.
Xehanort tried to like bring the darkness out of him, so he forced it
Mm-hmm.
by like basically extracting the darkness from Ven, and we have like basically darkness in like physical form essentially. And they want to forged the Keyblade to kind of have Kingdom Hearts be reachable and
Yep.
everything, and just like have like the whole thing reset into darkness and just have the Keyblade war going all over again. But that fails.
Not the Keyblade, by the way. The Keyblade.
Yes, the Keyblade.
Greek letter.
The
Greek letter. Key.
Because that's not
Or
confusing.
Kai. Yeah. Come on.
But yeah.
Why?
BBS story is not my forte. I mean, I know generally what happens and all this other stuff, but it's like I mostly fixate on the actual gameplay of these games anyway.
Yeah, same. So BBS was the first game with the command deck, and was it the first Osaka game? I want to say it was.
I thought.
I think it was Days, or it might have even
Maybe.
been it might have been Recom actually, but.
Oh
like,
yeah, maybe it was Recon, but
it's-
it was its own thing.
It's,
Yeah,
it's
I don't
fine. Either
know.
way.
At least for me, as far as I can think, like BBS is the first game that really has Osaka's footprint on it.
Mhm.
You have the command deck, and man, the one thing about BBS, like generally, I think the game is fun actually, and the command deck system is interesting. You can find ways to break it very easily, especially when you know that like magic and attack haste exists, and it just makes your deck refill instantly, and you don't have to ever swing your Keyblade normally, because you don't want to swing your Keyblade normally in this game because it feels like a wet noodle. It just doesn't do any damage. It doesn't feel good to hit things with your Keyblade, and your movement is really floaty when you're in the air. And I think that's my big problem with BBS's combat system. It added some more things like shot lock, which has been, was in KH3 as well, and as Miss said, has D-links, which is kind of a combination, I would say, between summons and drive.
Yes.
And then there was command melding, which in theory I like, but in practice I don't, because it like they want you to experiment with it, but it ends up being basically expensive and inefficient. You fuse commands, and sometimes you just get stuff that's bad.
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And
I
like,
One of
remember
the
that. Oh
biggest-
man.
you'll have a great command that you really like. You're like, all right, if I fuse this with something else, I'll get something great. And then you get some trash, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
glad I did that.
It's
Thanks.
it's nice to have somebody who's played it can tell you, okay, no, do this, yeah, go that way. That's probably the best
That
one.
is certainly the biggest problem BBS has, in my opinion, is it gives you so many options that, I mean, it has like a lot of flashy type of stuff, but there's like almost nothing that's like practical for the actual game itself. It's more just like, hey, here's this cool thing, here's this cool idea, let's just do this. There's like I maybe use like 10% of the commands, like the entire like full completion of the game, because
You like Thunder Surge? Yeah, that's
yes,
good.
Like there's just some that are just like like S tier, and like everything else is like F tier type of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like it's not very practical. I mean, not this. There's some very interesting things about it, mind you, but it's just like it's just kind of superfluous and a waste of time to do that if it's not really gonna aid you that much, aside from just like a completionist standpoint. It's like, yeah, I made the command, I'm never gonna use it, but I'm gonna make it because I need it to complete the journal and stuff. It's like there's no satisfaction from that, and that's kind of disappointing, because one of the big things about games like these is you get stronger and stronger and more useful stuff as
Right.
you progress through that, and that's just not there with BBS, unfortunately.
BBS would have really benefited with command melding, specifically with a try it out system where like, all right, I'm gonna meld this and see what I get, and if I don't like, and then it should let you go into like just a separate thing, just let's try this, see if you like it, and if you don't like it, you should be able to undo your meld, because it wants you to experiment, but sometimes you experiment and you lose something good and get something terrible.
Exactly.
And then all the abilities like attack and magic case and second chance, leaf bracer, all these things that were just things you unlocked throughout KH2 and any other games you just got to equip with AP, those came from melding with the different crystals, the pulsing, wellspring, what were the other ones? I don't remember.
I don't know. Abounding.
Abounding is one of them. Yeah, those just came with melds, and again, they want you to experiment, but in my opinion, the best way to play that game is to pull up a command melding guide and just meld the best stuff,
Yeah.
because experimenting doesn't get you very far in that
Right.
game, especially if you're playing on crit or something like that. You're just gonna get railed if you don't have the right stuff.
Also, it's commands basically replace the MP system in pretty much, and it's similar to how like the cards kind of acted as like the sort of MP in COM, except this is like not really as strategic. I don't know like an exact word to describe it, but I just saw Abandon's comment there, and it's like, yeah, there really is no MP, quote unquote, in BBS, and
Yeah, it's just
it
cooldown.
just
It's all cooldowns
yeah,
on your
and
command deck.
it's just kind of a shame. Like this has been a thing even in KH3's main game to some degree. It's like it's like very much it discourages you from using physical attacks. I know you kind of brought up a point about that, but it's like one of the most satisfying things about 1 and 2 was having your physical attacks really be impactful and meaningful when you hit stuff
It's
with it, you know?
it's the main form of damage in 1 and 2.
And it's like
like
basically the worst option in most cases.
even though we talk about how broken like magic and limits and all these other things are in KH2, I still think most of your damage comes from physical hits because you're working in physical hits with your magic and your
Right.
limits and stuff. So even Duck Flare, which we know is outstandingly broken in PS4, but man, those base combos with horizontal slashes and aerial dives
They're
and all this stuff
satisfying.
does so much damage and feels so good.
Yeah, it's like people say KH2 is Smash Triangle to win.
No, BBS.
BBS is very much more of an example for that
Yeah,
one. You could literally like every mob fight, literally magnet, thunder,
Magnet
magnet,
Thunder.
thunder. Oh, we're done.
Yeah,
Okay, that's literally. It's like,
yeah.
and don't get me wrong, not that I didn't use magnet and thunder in Cage too, but it felt nowhere near like you
Well,
can just
there's a
spam that
limit
so
on it.
much.
You have to, if you run out of MP,
Exactly.
you got to throw an
Yeah, you
ether
only have enough
or
MP for like 3 magnets or
uh,
something, you know. So I mean,
yeah.
it's like there's a cost to that. But in BBS, especially when you have abilities like magic haste and attack haste and stuff like that, it's like you literally have to wait like 3 seconds or something for a command to come back. And if you have multiple commands, you basically just need like 2 of each, and they automatically refill. Like
Yeah,
the first one
you,
automatically refills by the time you're done with the second one. It's just like
as you said,
broken.
like in speed, if you watch a speed run of BBS, the mob fights, it's just they just cycle their deck. It's just magnet, thunder, magnet, thunder, magnet, thunder. It's
Mhm.
like okay, cool.
Which I mean, it's very practical and it's good, but it's like I wish there was kind of like a lot more variety,
Yeah.
like the other games, you know. But I mean, I guess it is what it is.
Yeah.
There is a lot of variety in BBS. The problem is most of it's bad. Like,
Exactly, it's
It's not optimal.
unfortunate.
There's
yeah,
one thing I
It's
remember
like the
about
opposite
this.
of Cage 2, as far as like having so many options, but like not like very few good choices.
Yeah. There's one thing I remembered about this game in particular. When I was playing it on stream, I had Abandon with me, and thank you, by the way, Abandon. He saved my life for this game. The final boss with Terra, I believe.
Oh
oh,
boy.
That's the one thing I remember.
buddy.
And he basically told me how to cheese it, or like how to get through it without having to pull my hair out. And I remember it was the toughest fight of all the games in my like I said, I haven't played all of them, but for me it was the most difficult because just like if I didn't know how to do the strat that Abandon told me, I don't know if I ever would have gotten through it with my sanity left. That was probably the hardest fight for me. I know we talked about Roxas and all the others. That was the hardest one for me.
Oh, Terra Nort is bad.
Yeah, Terra Nort one's
It's
really bad.
Very, very. It's not the worst, but it's very like I. Did you ever do any of post game type of stuff with BBS or no?
No, not really at all.
You're very fortunate.
Okay, good.
Especially if you were playing as Ted.
Mysterious figure. I never fought it, but I've seen it. That fight looks. Just
I will tell you, in my absence when I was gone for a while, I took it upon myself to plat BBS because it was just one of those things I wanted to. Because I have plat for like every KH game basically on PS4. I not only did I do that, I was stupid enough to try to do it at level 1 for everything.
Oh boy.
Which Ven and Terra or Ven and Aqua, that wasn't that bad. Level 1 Ven and level 1 Aqua, not so bad.
Terra.
Level 1 Terra had its moments across the board. It was like this is not terrible, but it's not fun either.
Yeah.
And I mean, the final boss, not the best, and a few other fights, not so good. But let me tell you, the mysterious figure fight at level 1 as Terra is probably the most frustrating thing I've ever experienced in a video game. Because like it's just painfully obvious he was not designed for that boss fight at all. It's very much a Ven/Aqua fight.
Yeah. That's all. That's the one thing I remember the most beyond everything else is that Terranort fight.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Oof.
The first time I played BBS, it took me hours to beat that fight. Hours.
I think it took me like 12 hours to beat Mysterious Figure at level 1 as Terra.
Oh
And
my gosh.
that's with like 10 attempts where he had like one hit left and he like cheesed me at the very end and I was just like so upset.
Oh
The
god.
one
I like popped off and like jumped in the air like when I won. It was like the most I was like, yes, I've conquered the most acidine fight
the,
in Kingdom Hearts history.
the one more thing I'll mention about BBS before I think we should move on, because we're actually
Yeah,
running a
we do
little
need to move
short on
on.
time.
Yeah.
We kind of need to speed through. But the other thing that Osaka kind of did for a while, they've improved in this area, I would say, in like KH3, for example. Man, none of the bosses stagger in that game. It's so
Yes.
obnoxious. Again, it's part of it. Like, it just feels like your Keyblade, you're hitting them with a wet noodle because like it doesn't do any damage. You don't feel the impact, and the enemy never staggers. Even if they're a humanoid enemy, Vanitas, you hit him, he just teleports or just doesn't stagger. The last boss, like Terranort,
Yeah,
he
oh
never
my gosh.
staggers.
Yeah.
He just does whatever he wants. They don't have like set openings that you can really tell, and the fights are just they're just honestly, I think the boss fights in BBS are just so horribly designed. It's just
It's rough.
awful.
One more quick thing before we move on. It was like at the basically at the end of BBS, pretty much like Terra's basically taken over. Like his physical form is now of that of like a younger version of Xehanort slash Terra kind of.
Yeah.
Ven, if you notice, Ven looks kind of remarkably identical to Roxas. So at the end of BBS, when Vanitas and Ven clash one more time, basically Ven's heart gets destroyed, and he has to take refuge in Sora's heart because they made a connection at the very start of the game.
Yes.
There's still one story thing that hasn't been quite explained there quite yet, like that. And then basically Aqua's trapped in the realm of darkness because of trying to save Terra, and she did the stupid thing and just kind of sacrificed herself. Which I mean, I guess it worked out, but yeah, that's kind of
Also,
where we are.
the land of departure becomes Castle Oblivion, and
Yes.
Ven's body's there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's pretty much everything for BBS anyway. So
Okay.
All right. Next is Coded, I guess, which I don't have much to say about. I've never played it. I watched the movie. It bored me to tears. And
basically,
that's about all I have to say.
Yeah, they're basically remembering the events that happened in like Kingdom Hearts 1 and stuff, and pretty much like whatever like that was kind of supposed to happen with Calm and everything, but Jiminy lost his journal entries when they stepped into Castle Oblivion, and they kind of had to get that like reset and everything. So that's just kind of catching them up on stuff, and yeah. It's a lot of people don't talk about Recoded because it basically adds nothing that we already know story wise. So it's just like let's remember the stuff for the journals. I mean, it's a fun game from what I've seen. It's one of the two I haven't actually beaten. I haven't played Recoded yet. I need to get around to that. But yeah, Recoded. Not really too much to say about it besides a lot of KH1 worlds again. Remake the journal and pretty much get up to speed for events going forward after the events of Kingdom Hearts 2. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
Yeah, I've heard it's actually the best command deck game.
Yeah.
From people who have played it, I've been told that it is the best game, like the best of the 3 KH games that use the command deck, which are BBS, Recoded, and Dream Drop Distance.
And yeah, I think we can just kind of move right on to.
Yep.
To
Let's talk about Dream Drop Distance.
This was the low point for the series. I would definitely say.
I actually dislike this. This is the only Kingdom Hearts game that I do not like.
Mm-hmm. It's understandable. I don't hate it, but I mean it's certainly my least favorite.
I don't hate it. I wouldn't say it's actually a bad game. If I were
to
I were to review it, I'd probably give it a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Probably.
Same.
It's not broken or buggy in any way, really, but it's just not fun for me. I don't know. I dislike DDD.
Well, where do you start? Gameplay or story? Because I gotta be honest, you gotta separate the two. The story for this is just its own thing.
I'll start. I'll break the ice and just kind of go over like general story stuff that's happening now. So, at this point, it's like it's pretty much explained, if it hasn't already, by this game anyway, that whenever. Because like the certain nobodies, like the organization and stuff, like they had their physical form and everything retained because they're like a strong person of will or whatever. And it's pretty much explained at this point that if said person, because a heartless and a nobody form when they lose their heart and stuff, right? So when that heartless specifically and that nobody specifically are defeated, that means that the original person will like rematerialize and they come back basically. So essentially, the way 3D starts off is it's like, oh hey, you remember these guys from their nobody form, and I guess their somebody form from BBS and
Yeah.
KH2 respectively. Like they're back now because the experimentation that went on, and oh, we didn't even talk about that, did we?
No, we didn't
Like
talk about the
the
experimentation stuff at
experimenting
all.
well, I guess because BBS kind of rallies right off of that, but
Yeah.
essentially, um, young Xehanort slash Terranord basically has a pseudonym, kind of. Not, I mean, it's not really a pseudonym, but he's not really who he is, quote unquote. It's weird, and he basically becomes like an apprentice for the real Ansem or Ansem the Wise, and Ansem the Wise is like, no, you will not conduct like severe
Him.
experiments because it's dangerous. And then Xehanort's like, okay, bro, and then he just like banishes him to the Shadow Realm and then just does whatever.
Yeah, it's him and the
Or
not Zigbar, but the his real name, somebody else, Braig or
Braig.
something. Yeah, Braig. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, like, and it's kind of you kind of learn that Braig seems a little bit weird, you know,
Yeah.
like he knows almost too much to a degree, which I mean, like there's a reason for that, but that's for a little bit later. And essentially they kind of overthrow Ansem the Wise, and they just start experimenting, and that's why like the bodyguards, like the experimentation, like I think like Evan's like a scientist or something in BBS, or so I don't know, kind of maybe. But like Alias and Dylan are like bodyguards, and then you see like Isa and Lee roaming Radiant Garden when Ben is going around it. And basically, that's kind of where the start of Organization 13 kind of began, with
Mhm.
like a lot of those characters kind of losing their hearts, turning into nobodies and stuff. And yeah, that pretty much gets looked into. It's like, okay, they're back now because their heartless and nobody stuff are like their forms are gone now, and that's very important for KH3 because that's why Xehanort and everything is like back and all that. But it is time for Sora and Riku to take the Mark of Mastery exam, and because of the events of KH2, where they officially become Keyblade Masters now. Well, one of them does, but and we start off fighting Ursula. I still don't understand that, but as opposed to just hitting giant orbs of light in BBS, we have to do like an entire game revolved around this now. And you dive into like the hearts of the worlds or the dreams of the worlds or something.
Yeah,
And Riku dives into Sora's
it's
dreams
it's
of
so
the
weird.
worlds.
It's so weird.
I still don't quite get that. It's really, it sounds so weird, but
So you do. Here's what I understand from the story. I'll do my best. The first dive you get where you like fight Ursula, that like you're diving into the Sleeping Destiny Islands there,
okay,
and you
that makes
fight
sense.
Ursula there. I don't know why Ursula's in Sleeping Destiny Islands, but whatever, she is. Who cares? It's a tutorial boss fight. It's fine. We'll just go with it. And then at that point, the organization like basically hijacks Sora's Mark of Mastery exam and
Mm-hmm.
leads them on the path towards becoming a Xehanort vessel.
Right.
And Riku, I don't know how he does this, but I guess he realizes it or something, and he dives into Sora's dreams to save him.
It's so silly just
Which
even talking about it.
Which actually, it's kind of interesting because
It is.
it's actually not foreshadow, but if you're paying attention, you can figure it out throughout the game because Riku has a Dream Eater symbol on his back throughout the entire game as you play him, except for I think in that very first fight with Ursula. Um, so yeah,
We
this
need to
game,
talk about the unversed.
yeah,
Because they're so forgettable.
every game for some reason they feel the need to introduce a new enemy type. KH2 had nobodies. BBS has the
the
Unversed, which come
unversed,
from
yes.
the darkness from Vanitas, and DDD has Dream Eaters and Nightmares, which are the evil Dream Eaters. And
Clever.
let me say this thing about DDD and just in general with games that do this. I do not like games that are not Pokemon that try to do Pokemon. I don't want to play
Fair enough.
Pokemon when I'm not like I don't want Pokemon in Kingdom Hearts. If I want to play Pokemon, I'll go play Pokemon. I don't want to groom my Dream Eaters. I don't want to play with them. I don't want to rub them. I don't want to do whatever they want me to do and upgrade. No, just give me some real actual party members, not these monsters that I don't care about. I'm sorry. I just have this thing about these games, like the Tales series tried to do it once. They did a sequel to Tales of Symphonia, which is not a good game in my opinion, and they added like a Pokemon thing to it where you could like capture monsters, and I just hated it. I'm like, I just let me have the party members. Why are you doing Pokemon? We're not playing Pokemon. Stop.
Yeah, it definitely feels a little how do I phrase it? Like, lonely, like
Yeah.
without with no other like humanoid. Well, I mean, I guess technically like Three Musketeers world, but who cares? But it's just like, yeah, it's kind of rough. I mean, I guess you kind of felt that sense of loneliness when you played BBS, and you had like the occasional time when Ven and Aqua or Intera like came together for
Yeah.
like Trinity Armor and stuff. But it's like at least that happened, like that happened like occasionally, so you didn't feel completely alienated. You feel super alienated compared to like every other KH game. I feel when you play this.
And someone brought up Final Fantasy 13 too in the game. I hate it in that game too. It's stupid. I don't want it. Like, I'm playing Final Fantasy. I'm not playing Pokemon. Anyways, um, I guess. So yeah, the gameplay they added
Balloon.
dives. Yeah,
No,
I
okay,
mean,
go.
so the combat, yeah, the combat is balloon. If you have the balloon command or balloon
You
you
won.
win. You won the
Congratulations.
game. Fill your entire deck with balloon and like maybe a couple of cures here and there so you don't die, and some magic haste skills, and you're good. You beat DDD. Good job,
You
dude.
did it.
It's really I mean, I would love to go into like more details on stuff, but it's just like and they kind of like rehashed a few things. Like I actually kind of like how they fleshed out Traverse Town more in 3D. Like honestly,
Yeah,
maybe some people don't like that, but I honestly really like Traverse Town's like overall world as like
that's
an
cool.
atmosphere in 3D. It's pretty good. Like it might be
That's
my
it.
favorite variant of it.
Actually, okay, one thing I will give DDD, the level design is cool, and
With flow
flow
motion and
motion
stuff. Yeah,
is
that really
cool.
cool mechanic, honestly.
Like they made the worlds are so much more open and explorable in DDD and than they had in any previous, basically since KH1. Like that was
Mhm.
one of the things that we didn't really mention about some of the games we've talked about in between. But man, KH2, BBS, Days, all super linear. You pretty much just
Exactly.
walk straight and go from fight to fight, and that's it. There's not a lot of exploration to be done in those games.
Mhm.
So I think Dream Drop actually does the level design and the exploration pretty well.
Yeah, that's especially World That Never Was. I loved that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like unfortunately, like there's very few positives that even people who like 3D can really actually like tell you
And
about. But I
man,
mean,
the drop mechanic.
so
Oh,
obnoxious.
why? Just why?
I mean, thankfully they do have items that do prolong that, but it's still so
Yeah, but you
inconvenient
have to
otherwise.
equip that item in your
Exactly.
command deck,
Yeah.
which you don't
So
want to do because you want
it's
more
a
balloons.
workaround. It's a workaround, but it's not a good solution. So could have been implemented just much
Yeah.
better.
So for those of you who don't know, basically you play as Sora and Riku in the game, and there's this meter that goes down as you're playing as one of the characters, and when it runs out, you get dropped. You get dropped to the other character and have to play as that other character. And this can happen in the middle of a fight or in the middle of a boss fight. And if it happens in the middle of a boss fight, you have to restart that boss fight when you
Oh,
go back to the other character.
what is
Mm-hmm.
that?
That's
It's really
very.
stupid.
Mm-hmm.
They I feel like they shoehorned it in because they decided to call the game Dream Drop Distance. Like, man, it's got to be Kingdom Hearts 3D because it's on the 3DS, so we got to call it DDD, and we got to figure out what the second D. Oh, I guess it's drop. So let's add this stupid mechanic that literally has no purpose whatsoever.
Speaking of shoehorning in things, they kind of they opened Pandora's box a little bit, and we now have a very fun aspect of fiction called time travel
Oh
implemented
God.
into the series now. Because the
Anybody?
series,
Oh my gosh.
because the series, needs time travel to convolute things even more, of course.
Just anytime a game uses time travel, it's immediately just pure skeptical for me. I'm just pure skepticism. If you're using time travel, you're just like it seems like you're desperate. You just
I feel like if it's the main premise of your story, it's okay, but just to have it in as a factor, it's just
Oh yeah.
I don't do that.
Chrono
Kingdom Hearts
Trigger does this okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kingdom
This is
Hearts
just fine.
story was already complicated, and then they
Exactly.
added
Time
time
travel,
travel.
and
It's
you're
like,
just like, okay.
why?
So
Okay.
it's like something or other. Xehanort like sacrifices like his heart and like body or something to be able to visit himself at like different time periods or whatever. And basically, we have young Xehanort in the present now, and he wants to create like this new Organization 13,
Mhm.
where he's going to take past iterations of whatever he was involved with, and basically the term Norded becomes a thing now, where it's basically a
Norded.
Xehanort version of previous org members and such. So that's why we have things like Larxene and Marluxia are back in KH3, and just like, and I think they kind of want to have they want Sora as a vessel for one of those, and that's
Mhm.
why that's kind of the whole premise behind 3D and like why Sora kind of loses his powers and he has to get strong again for KH3's story and everything. But
Yeah,
man, like just
he gets
the whole
brought to
time
the
travel-
brink, and then like he fails the test as a result. Which I'm like, really? How? Why would that? Why would he fail? It's like, oh, you succumbed to darkness, you failed. It's like, that's
He
not
gets
his fault.
He gets saved by Riku, Mickey, and Axel at the
Yeah.
end of DDD because he like without them he would have
Right.
he basically fell right into the organization's lap and would have
Mhm.
been
Sure.
a Xehanort vessel.
So he fails, and that's why he loses all his powers. So there you go.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
And
for
Riku
KH3.
passes, and he is officially a Keyblade Master. And,
Yep.
and
Also-
Sora is still not officially a Keyblade Master, which is kind of messed up. But
It's-
Also,
yeah, come
Axel
on.
and Kyrie now have Keyblades. All right, cool.
Yep.
That's the end of DDD.
like the Kyrie thing, I'm like okay, but like Lee getting one, I was like okay, dude.
He just
Like,
asked.
what-
He's like, "Can I have one?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
sure, bro.
like,
Okay.
Only
Oh,
two, but
yeah.
you sure you can have it.
oh
Just
my
just
God.
take one. Sure.
All right.
They do absolutely nothing. I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and
All
then
right.
that basically comes into KH3.
Wait.
But yeah, go on.
I was gonna say we have like 10 to 15 minutes left to talk about KH3, so we want to touch on Union Cross real quick and then head in there. Or did you
0.2.
have something? Did you? Oh, 0. God, 0.2.
I know.
Okay,
We're-
0.2.
I just want to say something. Like, we do try and cut this off at 2 hours. I don't foresee us finishing this. We may have to consider revisiting this like either next week or another week, because we can't get through all of it just because Unchained Key and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You have
Maybe
to talk
Union
about it. It's like
Cross-
it's actually it's really important. So
Union Cross is like an entire beast on itself.
it's
so
yeah,
that
it's a
would be
monster.
best
So
safe. So
yeah, just want to point that if we like kind of cut this off early, we'll definitely have to revisit this at
King.
like next week or a different time, like part 2.
we can 0.2 only takes like 2 seconds. to
Okay,
explain. It's basically-
0.2.
It's basically like like what happens to Aqua at the end after the events of BBS, and essentially it's meant to forge like the timeline from the end of BBS to the start of KH, or the end of KH1 actually technically, and Aqua's in the realm of darkness, going through all these other like almost worlds from BBS, and just remembering the times that she spent with Ven and Terra before the bad things happened. She meets up with Mickey in the realm of darkness, and they eventually make it to, I think it's like the Destiny Islands that fell to darkness, I think, right?
Yep.
Or something like that. And then they eventually like make it to what is basically the world of chaos, which is where like Sora and the gang are at the end of KH1 when they defeat Ansem's or Xehanort's Heartless. to be
Xehanort's
more
Heartless,
specific.
Who calls
and-
himself
but,
Ansem?
But just Ansem, because why not?
Yeah.
And essentially, because of writing, Aqua is basically never seen somehow, and she kind of gets taken back to that like variant of Destiny Islands, and no one even knew she was there except Mickey, and he just proceeds not to tell anybody for like 5 years.
And don't forget, Mickey loses his shirt.
I would have lived with him
Stop.
just like having it ripped off from like the shadows attacking, but it just materializes off him.
It just disappears.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's gone.
essentially, what they wanted to establish is time passes much faster in the realm of darkness than the real time, because Aqua's basically still the same age, and obviously,
Yeah.
Sora and Riku and the gang are like 10 years old. So.
Yeah, time's weird there, I guess.
Yep.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
that's all we really need to know. And then KH3.
Also, do you like fighting Demon Towers and Dark Sides? Because that's all the bosses in 0.2. Oh, there's Phantom Aqua too, which is pretty
Oh, yeah.
cool. But other than that,
Anyway.
and yeah,
KH3.
We only have
Each-
like 10 minutes for this. So like I said, it's impossible. We're not going to do it. So
Honestly,
we'll do like a part 2
10
at some point.
10 minutes is a decent time for this. Essentially, it takes place right after pretty much immediately after the events of 3D.
Mhm.
You just have to like it sort of needs to get strong again, so they revisit Olympus Coliseum and they just like kind of get a more. They start to understand that other people from the organization are kind of coming back because we have like that little thing of Zigbar, like
Mhm.
he shows up in that world and everything. But it's the standard Kingdom Hearts stuff where it's like, oh no, Disney World problems, movie plot stuff, and
Yep.
all that. So that's kind of most of what KH3 is. Unfortunately, it doesn't really quite intermingle as well as the other games. I feel like KH1 did it the best. It's kind of tapered off a little bit since then, but
I
Yeah,
I
the
haven't finished. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead, Spoon.
yeah, the organization members are there, and they're like, yeah, we're doing experiments with hearts, and they talk about like the 7 new lights or something like that, and then that just never goes anywhere. So, or the 7 new princesses, and
Mhm.
that just never goes anywhere, at least from what I remember. Um, and yeah, they're doing like in Toy Story, they're making sure they can like implant hearts into inanimate
Yes.
objects,
oh,
and
Yeah,
because we
that's the whole
have
point of Toy Story.
replicas now. Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Oh.
and Otto's still playing Cage 3,
I'm
so
still
he
playing
hasn't
through
gotten
it.
there.
Oh,
You know, it's
but
okay. You can spoil some stuff, but
yeah,
just
he
like
hasn't
my
gotten
experience so far, I'm in the Corona world, which we won't joke about that, but
Yeah,
um, you know, it's just like so far. Again, it just feels like the Disney worlds are their own internal story.
yeah,
Doesn't
they
feel
are.
like anything outside of that really
they
matters
just
besides
tacked
their
on
yeah, they're just
characters. Yeah.
I guess they're experimenting, so that's it. And every time I see one of the organization members, they're so cryptic, and it's very it's just like, okay, word salad. Come on, get what you're trying to say across, please. So
But
it's
essentially, yeah, they're pretty much taking past iterations of Xehanort's
yeah,
involvement, whether it be the organization or like Dark Riku or just like his older self or younger selves, and he's basically making like an artificial Organization 13
yep,
to serve as the 13 Darknesses and the 7 Lights that are basically Sora and the gang that all have Keyblades and stuff, and like they want to like he wants to forge the Keyblade War officially in this game, and that's basically like the whole ending of like the sort of Xehanort
Yeah,
saga of it.
that's the main thrust. That's the main thrust of the plot
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
of KH3. Um, shall we dive into gameplay real quick
Sure.
yeah. Let's
for
talk about gameplay
KH3?
real quick. Yeah,
Honestly, I thought KH3 was a pretty okay game. Like especially on the back of like other things they'd done in the previous. Like I still feel like 1 and 2 will like always be better than 3 after all these events. But I was not disappointed with 3 gameplay wise. Like when I initially played it, and I think it's okay now, especially with the DLC if we get to that.
Yeah, and I believe I said this when we did our KH3 episode like a year ago when you came on last time. Otto
Mm-hmm.
wasn't here for that.
mm-hmm.
It was a different thing, but I I still think KH3 is my second favorite Kingdom Hearts game. I like it better than KH1.
That's fair.
Um, yeah, for me, KH1 is just a little too clunky. It's a little too clunky for me. As I said earlier, it's a great base, and we wouldn't have the series the way it is today without KH1. So you
Mm.
gotta love KH1 for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think even base KH3, I like just a little bit better than KH1. It's pretty close, but yeah.
Well, my thoughts come with a grain of salt. Haven't finished it. I actually played the demo at E3, and all I remember during the demo of E3 was thinking, okay, the combat in this game feels really, I just like, regardless of what I've heard about being really floaty and such, it was really like fun. It was also extremely flashy. I don't know. So I was like, I thought that was cool at the time. Now that I'm playing it though, the flashy parts are getting a little much. Um,
You can turn
just
that off, by the way,
you,
in the menu.
yeah,
In the settings, you can like turn off the animations for the Keyblade transformations and
but
for all
still,
that
like
stuff.
all that
Which,
stuff, like
yeah,
all the different things, like I like when you go, I like the tank and there's like the carousel and all that. I get it, and it feels like it's obviously it feels like it's part of the game, and I don't know, like turning it off or on, it's just like it's a lot. There's a certain element of simplicity that I do like even KH2 added enough where it was like, okay, this is enough, this is plenty. KH3 feels a little bit overboard for me. There's just so
I
much
agree.
stuff. So I think it's a case of, particularly with like combat and just like going through the worlds, too much stuff can actually just be a bad thing. And
yeah,
this is a case where, like, for me, way too much stuff to access I kind of like KH2's. There's stuff and you can be creative with it, but it's not overloaded at all.
It certainly is an improvement from the BBS like syndrome, I like to call it, where it's like they had so much flashy stuff and like nothing was like at the very least some of the flashy stuff is in 3 is
Yeah.
actually like pretty decent
Yeah,
in
that's
combat,
true.
so
Yes.
like it's much more reined in, and it's certainly like their best effort that they've had like ever
No,
since they
I think
Osaka team took over.
if
Like it's one of those I'm sorry,
no, go ahead. No, please
yeah.
finish your thought. Finish your thought.
It's just one of those things where it's like, looking back on it, I'm just not disappointed by it. On the back of other things, like it was kind of in a whatever spot, and especially on the back of the DLC they released, I'm pretty satisfied. I
Sure.
wanted it to be my third favorite of the series after I beat it, and that's exactly how I feel. So
Yeah, I think one of our friends, Daj, said this to me when I was about to play. He's like, if you're a casual player and if you're playing this casually, it's going to be really fun, and I agree with that. I feel that same way right now, but I can see how like okay, this is a lot of stuff though. I don't know like do all these things like there are certain ones like too. It's like Slide Mountain or something.
Flash Run.
Yeah, Flash Run. Or whatever. I hope it's good. Splash Run. Yeah, I hope it's really good. I don't know how to use it effectively. I'm terrible at it, I guess.
Here's my thing with KH3. Okay, I'm gonna try and do this as quickly as possible because we're pretty much out of time here. I think the combat of KH3 is generally really fun. It feels good, like especially when you're in Keyblade transformations and like attractions. Like you kill, there's so many enemies on screen, so much stuff is happening, stuff is blowing up. Magic, like the Za spells, Waterza, Thundaza, just like you just kill so many enemies at once. It feels great to play. But and there are a lot of options. There's attractions, there's Keyblade transformations, there's magic, there's links, there's what else? I'm sure I'm missing something, but
shot locks.
Shot lock.
there's shot locks, and there's the team attacks that show up. Here's the problem: some of the cool stuff that shows up, like attractions and team attacks, are completely random. You have no control over them, and it's just press the fun button to do the thing.
Fun button.
Yep. B, compared to KH2, where everything intermingles, like you can combo magic and physical combos, you can do a limit and then do a bunch of physical combos along with that. Like you can even like do a limit and then throw ethers and then throw magic into your limit, stuff like that. KH3, everything feels separate. Magic is its thing. You do magic. You do physical combos. You do a link. When you do a link, you just control that link, and that's all you do. In KH2, when you do a summon, the summon comes out and does its own thing. Like Stitch restores your MP, Chicken Little does the whistle, which magnets things in, and you do other stuff along with that.
They're very much more like KH1 summons than KH2.
Yeah, and everything in KH3 feels that way. Attractions, when you do an attraction, again, it's like a mini game. You play the attraction and you just kill everything. Okay, cool. But there's just no depth to the combat system in A, the randomness, and B, just the nothing intermingles in the combat system. And most of the magic spell, like Blizzard is useless in this game as a combat spell
until the DLC, but that's about it. Like they actually made Blizzard kind of okay in DLC, but that's it.
Yeah, but okay. Yeah, you're right. But it just feels like all the like Thunder is your AoE spell, Fire's a projectile, Blizzard's a projectile, Arrow's supposed to be your crowd control spell, but it's garbage compared to Magnet. It just I don't know. It
is what it is.
Whatever.
Yeah, I do wish that you could influence your situation commands better. Or I think I remembered you said specifically, I wish it was more like FF7 Remake, where you could choose your actions after it's built up a certain way, and that would have made it like a lot more cohesive in terms of like what you want to do at that moment.
Yeah, they could have stuck like you don't want the slowdown system that FF7 has because KH is a much more fast-paced game than FF7R is. But I think if they use the same, like the arrows that build up in KH3 and ATB are a very similar concept.
Yes.
So you just stick with the arrows, and like once the arrows build up, then you get to pick from maybe a separate command menu what you want to do with, instead of it just being like random of you just like, oh, did you get the keyboard transformation that you wanted, or did you get the grand magic that you wanted? No, too bad. Do it again.
Yeah, and that's
right.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, 3 had a lot of interesting ideas. Just if it was done a little bit differently, it could have been actually like quite good, honestly, by comparison to pretty much everything that they've done in the last 10 years.
The one more thing I'll say about it, with the base Sora combos until the DLC feel awful. They don't do any
Yes.
damage. They're slow and laggy. When you get into a Keyblade transformation, physical's great, like you do a ton of damage, but it's not worth it. It's the reason the speed run spams magic so much. It's
Yeah,
because
unfortunately.
it takes too long to build up to the Keyblade transformation to actually do damage because your base combos just do no damage. Like,
Hmm.
and they don't have any AoE to deal with these huge mob fights that you get. That's why magic is so effective in that game. It just deals with everything. And like money and ethers are so plentiful that you can just pop ethers like they're candies.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'm gonna interrupt. I apologize. Let's maybe any final thoughts come across here. Anything else just to close this out, and then we'll round out the episode here. And like I said, we didn't even talk about. We have other stuff on the agenda. We didn't even talk about what we think of the future of the series. We didn't even talk about speedrunning at all. And we
It's
didn't even
okay.
talk about anything else, even regarding like I know the DLC and such. So hopefully we'll get like another episode of this just to follow up on all that
Mhm.
stuff because there's a lot of different sections we couldn't get to. So both of you, just whatever extra thoughts you want to round this out with, and then I'll sort of go into the conclusion and end the
I mean,
podcast there.
I mean, either way, I'm still very much appreciative for the series for what it's brought. It certainly has had, in my opinion, it's had more highs than lows across the years, and especially now on the back of the DLC, I think it's actually in a pretty good spot with KH3 because at base KH3 I was kind of like and then I feel like a lot of people attribute like Limit Cut and Secret Episode to like Osaka redemption story kind of deal, and yeah, I mean, I'm very much keen on seeing what they do next with this next chapter now that the Xehanort saga has come to an end.
Yeah, I agree with Mist 100% on this. It's we love the series so much that we trash on it a lot. We talk about a lot of the problems with the series, but the truth is, like, I like, with the exception of DDD, I like all of these games.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, they're all fun in their own right. They all have their problems. Even KH2 it has a few issues. It's not a perfect game by any means, but
Sure.
I think the combat is as close to perfect as you're gonna get. That's my opinion, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited for the future of the series. I will, until they release an actually completely bad game, or maybe even a slew of bad games, I will continue to buy Kingdom Hearts the day it comes out and be
Me
very
too.
excited for the next game that comes out. I love this series. They're super fun. The story's weird. It's convoluted, but I enjoy it for what it is. Um, and yeah, as Miss said, after the limit cut, especially, I'm excited for the future of this series, and they get a little bit of a fresh slate with the end of the Xehanort
Basically a
saga. Now
reboot.
they can reset the story a little bit and
Yeah.
do a new thing.
Yeah, I think this is really a fun series. Like I said, I'm pretty new to it, but it really is fun. I'm glad that like Spoon and other people mentioned it, and I got to play it. It's a really good time. That's even as somebody who's not like following the story as well as others. It's just like it's fun to get in and get immersed into the Disney stuff. I love Toy Story, by the way, in KH3. Just like the look of Toy Story is exactly what I wanted it to be. So that's some stuff that I really
KH3
appreciate.
looks great, by
Oh
the
yeah,
way,
it
and
It
looks
does.
great.
the production, we didn't really talk about the production value on Kingdom Hearts is always great.
Yeah, it's great.
The music's great, the graphics are great. You know, visually,
Especially
yeah,
especially the difference between 0.2 and KH3. Like you can tell they added like a lot
yeah,
of like finishing touches to really polish it off, and it does
yeah.
look very
Yeah,
great
it's
aesthetically.
it's gorgeous. I love it. So they really do take care with the Disney stuff, and I really appreciate that because that's my childhood in a lot of those cases, and those are things that really got me interested in the series in particular. So let's round this out. Everybody who watched and missed, obviously, we really appreciate you guys coming out and supporting the podcast, supporting the topic, obviously Kingdom Hearts, and like I said in the beginning, we have socials, the Myriathon Twitter. Most Myriathon Twitter updates will actually come from my account or Spoon's account. So my Twitter account is Automaton89, and Spoon, what's yours?
At SPT Spoon.
Yep. And if you did really like this conversation or potentially want to follow up or some kind of topic in the particular that you're looking at and you want us to talk about, that maybe we have something to say, let us know. We're very interested in continuing this podcast. Also consider supporting our YouTube. Like I said at the beginning, we're really pushing the subscribers. You don't have to hit the bell icon. You don't have to get the spam. I typically upload the VODs now Wednesdays because I'm actually doing some editing for them. Don't be too impressed. It's not a lot. But getting to 100 subscribers will actually allow us to get a custom domain. So you can actually just type in youtube.com/channel/the Myriathon as an example. Right now, it's just a string of letters and numbers, and it's kind of annoying to try and type in. We're doing our best, and all we ask is support, and that's really about it for YouTube. So, like I said, we appreciate it. That's all my stuff. Sometimes I stream. Right now, Assassin's Creed, and I am playing KH3. I'm trying to get through that, but I don't play too much, so you only expect like an hour and a half or 2 hours of that from me. Spoon, why don't you go ahead and talk a bit about your stuff, and then Mist, you can close it out.
Yep. As Otto said, please, if you guys enjoyed the podcast, please consider following the channel on Twitch, Mixer, and subscribe to the YouTube to give us some support. As Otto said, if you have suggestions for topics or any other improvements we maybe could make to the stream, the podcast in any way, please let us know. You can join the Myriathon Discord server. That's below the stream in the on the Twitch channel. And yeah, if you want, we've been doing this every week at the same time, 5 p.m. Pacific time, talking about a variety of topics. So again, if you enjoyed it, I know a lot of you were probably here for Myst or for Kingdom Hearts specifically, but you know, if you like listen to us ramble on about other stuff, please consider checking us out on the other days. We'd appreciate it. And you can leave your feedback, you know, wherever. Discord, you can tweet at us. I don't care. That's fine. Or yeah, whatever. Just if you want updates, you can follow my or Otto's Twitter on that. So yeah, check us out. Please support. As for my stuff, I stream mostly JRPGs right now. I'm doing Persona 5 Royal, and I'll be playing this new game called Sakura Wars that came out.
I heard about this one. I actually was slightly intrigued by that one.
Yeah, so I'll be playing that probably this week and next. So check it out if you're interested in that. Again, I know you guys are probably gonna watch Mist do his speedruns, but and maybe I'll go back to speedrunning over the summer a bit once I'm out of school in a couple more weeks. But I may not have time for it, to be honest, with like Xenoblade coming out, because I'm gonna play that too. So yeah, we'll see. Mist.
Yeah, Mist, go ahead.
Off.
I would just like to say thanks for having me on. It would be really awesome if we could do like a part 2 to this, like you said earlier. Because of course we didn't get to certain things, so we would have liked to talk about that. That's just the KH series in general, though. We actually went fast.
we did. we really did.
We still didn't get to every single thing that we wanted to. So I mean, it's okay. I would definitely be down for another cast of this, like later down the road, whenever it's convenient for you guys. So. I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and I saw definitely a few people from my stream in chat tonight, so thank you guys for coming out tonight.
Great. Well,
thank you, Mist.
Yeah, if you don't know where to follow Mist, his Twitter is like MistMaster1 or something, I think it is. Mist_Master1, there you go. So, yeah, if you're not following him, go ahead and do that. Yeah, thanks everybody. And like I said, support us if you can. If not, that's totally cool. We're just glad that you stopped by and we're talking. And I think that's going to be it. So thanks everyone, and hopefully we'll get a part 2. We'll figure that out.
At some point we'll do it again.
Yeah. So thanks everyone, and see you later.
See ya.